killer CEOs, how climate change became big oil's biggest crime. And, I started out by pointing out the public citizen would like you to know that there are killers among us. They wear $2,000 suits and travel in private jets. They're unbothered by the TSA or the teeming masses. Their children attend the finest universities in the world, private islands and yachts. Earn more in a day than most Americans take home in a year. And they're sure that their heirs will never have to work a day in their lives. Their fortunes, though, are the result of poisoning you, me, our children and grandchildren, every other living thing on Earth, and the temperature stability of our atmosphere. And this week, they are responsible in part for billions of dollars in losses, numerous deaths, and thousands of shattered lives in Southern California. I'm speaking of course, the fossil fuel industry executives in particular. Elect Trump is trying his best to cover for them, claiming that the fires ripping through California are the result of incompetence by the governor or the mayor. And in fact, one of the biggest lies that has been promoted, that was even repeated this morning on MSNBC, is that Karen Bass and the Democrats who run Los Angeles cut back on the budget for firefighting. There was a proposed budget that had cuts for firefighting. And it was in response, actually, to a federal demand for, it's a whole long story, but that budget never got passed. And the budget that did get passed had a $40 or $50 million increase in the firefighting budget. But, don't tell Fox News that, or for that matter, MSNBC this morning, Joe Scarborough, because the Republicans, they started pushing that proposed budget that never got passed, as if that was the budget. So, and the media is largely going along with Trump's charade. Very rarely do they even mention. I have not once heard one word about the role of the fossil fuel industry in all this. Have you? But these fires, that's like a TV news person saying, well, a United jet crashed today and 150 people died. Gee, I guess, crap happens. News. No, you get an aviation expert on and you say, well, does this look like pilot error? Forget to put bolts on the door again? What's going on here? You want to find out, how did this happen? What caused these fires in Los Angeles? Well, fires at this time of year in Los Angeles area are not anything new, but fires and winds like this are. And this is a measurable and was predicted consequence of climate change. In fact, it was predicted in 1959 by Edward Teller in a keynote speech to the American Petroleum Institute and the Columbia Graduate School of Business. And he started talking about carbon dioxide. He said, it transmits visible light, but it absorbs the infrared radiation, which is emitted from the Earth. Its presence in the atmosphere causes a greenhouse effect. It has been calculated that a temperature rise corresponding to a 10% increase in carbon dioxide will be sufficient to melt the ice cap and submerge New York. All the coastal cities will be covered, and since a considerable percentage of the human race lives in coastal regions, I think that this chemical contamination is more serious than most people tend to believe. That was 1959. That sent the oil industry off on a search for, is Edward Teller right? And sure enough, a series of studies, the most famous was published in 1968, and that one, this is from the Research Institute. It said, quote, significant temperature are almost certain to occur by the year 2000, and these could bring about climactic changes. There seems to be no doubt that the potential damage to our pollutants, which we generally ignore because they have little local effects, CO2 and submicron particles, may be the cause of serious worldwide environmental changes. Now, that was 1968. It was 10 years later that said, we got to do something about this, and put solar panels on the White House and created our nation's first solar bank and all that other stuff. But that was also when the climate denial began. That's when the fossil fuel billionaires and the fossil fuel companies and the front groups that they funded started claiming that there was no global warming, or if there was, it was just a natural variation in solar radiation. And they've been doing that for years and years and years. You know, Mark Morano used to come on this program all the time. He was funded by the fossil fuel industry, you know, denying climate change. I finally gave up debating him because it just, you know, it was stupid. I mean, I'm talking about a decade ago we were having these debates, and then it was still considered a debate media, bizarrely. Now they just don't even talk about it. Public Citizen published a report in 2023 titled Charging Big Oil with Homicide. And they're talking about going after big oil in a very real way. Now, Rob Bonta, who is the Attorney General for California, has actually initiated, this was in 2023, a lawsuit against ExxonMobil, Shell, Chevron, ConocoPhillips, BP, Phillips 66, and the American Petroleum Institute. But it's not for homicide. It's for public nuisance, product liability, failure to warn, pollution, impairment, and destruction of natural resources, misleading advertising and environmental marketing, and unfair competition. You know, is Nathan Hochman, the Attorney General for the District Attorney for Los Angeles, is he going to go after these oil companies? Are we going to see actual prosecutions or attempted prosecutions of executives in the fossil fuel industry? You know, inquiring minds want to know. Will our media ever begin talking about the role that the big oil, coal, and natural gas companies are playing in the destruction of Los Angeles? Will they ever? What do you think? I'm skeptical, frankly. Anyhow, stay tuned. It's 15 minutes past the hour. In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the HartmannReport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Unsettling Truths, the ongoing dehumanizing legacy of the doctrine of discovery by Martin Soon-Chan Ra. This is from chapter 1. You cannot discover lands that are already inhabited. I, Marx, passed a line of men dressed as Spanish sailors from the 1490s. I was in front of Union Station in Washington, D.C., near the massive statue of Christopher Columbus overlooking the United States Capitol. Every Columbus Day, there's an official ceremony in this plaza honoring Columbus as the discoverer of America. I had stumbled upon this ceremony by accident the year prior. There were a few non-natives holding signs and protesting the ceremony, but nothing very disruptive. I went back the following year primarily out of curiosity. I wasn't intending to protest, nor did I want to make a scene. As I walked up behind the statue and approached the group of men dressed as Spanish sailors, the words just came out of my mouth. You cannot discover lands already inhabited. As I walked further down the line, I said it again, this time a little louder. You cannot discover lands already inhabited. As I continued walking, I came to the front of the line where a group of men dressed in suits were standing. I repeated myself, making sure they could hear me. "You cannot discover lands already inhabited." "Suck it up," was the reply I heard as I kept walking. By this time, I'd walked around the statue and reached the front where a small stage had been erected and chairs set up for people to watch the ceremony. It hadn't started yet, but more than half the audience was seated waiting for it to begin. So I stopped near the center, turned toward the crowd, and in a calm but loud voice I said to the people, "You cannot discover lands already inhabited. That process is known as stealing, conquering, or colonizing. The fact that America calls what Columbus did discovery reveals the implicit racial bias of the country, that Native Americans are not fully human." Quickly, one of the white men dressed in a suit walked over and interrupted me. "You are not welcome here," he said as he grabbed my arm and began walking me away. I attempted to explain the appropriateness of both celebrating this holiday as well as hosting this ceremony, but instead of engaging in conversation, he threatened me with arrest and escorted me from the area. As I walked away from the gathering, I was amused at his words and the irony of their context. A white man participating in a public ceremony honoring Christopher Columbus as the discoverer of America, telling a native man he was not welcome in that space. How did a flawed assumption about the place of the indigenous population in U.S. society become normative? How are assumptions so deeply ingrained in the American psyche and imagination that dysfunctional and oppressive actions emerge? How did a dysfunctional idea and worldview form that allows for the displacement of native bodies? One of the explanations for the formation of this dysfunctional worldview is the doctrine of discovery. The doctrine of discovery is a set of legal principles that govern the European colonizing powers, particularly during the administration of indigenous land, regarding the administration. It is the primary legal precedent that still controls native affairs and rights, and international law formulated in the 15th and 16th centuries. From a theological perspective, the legal and political role of the doctrine of discovery is rooted in a dysfunctional theological imagination that shaped the secular worldview. The doctrine emerged from a series of 15th century papal bulls, which are official decrees by the Pope that carry the full weight of his ecclesiastical office. On June 18, 1452, Pope Nicholas V issued Diversus, which initiated the first set of documents that would compose the doctrine of discovery. The official decree of the Pope granted permission to King Alfonso V of Portugal, quote, "to invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens, Muslims, and pagans whatsoever, and other enemies of Christ wheresoever placed, and the kingdoms, dukedoms, principalities, dominions, and all movable and immovable goods whatsoever, held and possessed by them, and to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery, and to apply and appropriate to himself and his successors the kingdoms, dukedoms, counties, principalities, dominions, possessions, and goods, and to convert them to his or their use and profit." End of quote from Pope Nicholas's papal bull of 1452. Dum diversas would identify the Saracens, a common term for Muslims at the time, and pagans, essentially identifying any non-Christians as others, as those who could be targeted for, quote, perpetual. The papal bull intentionally used language that identified those outside the European Christian world and enforced the Western theological imagination of non-Europeans as other. The Portuguese mystical statements to heart.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Well, happy Wednesday. Bob Kennedy is testifying before the Senate right now. It's kind of weird, but we'll see how this shakes out. I have a feeling I haven't heard a single Republican senator skepticism, so probably another one for Trump. We'll see. Anyhow, we got a lot to talk about today. Trump's hostile takeover of America, the corporate raiders' final heist. Also, when will Democrats stand up to Trump? Democrats. And in fact, Adam Kinzinger has some thoughts on this. And Carolyn Kennedy calls her cousin, RFK Jr., a predator ahead of the confirmation hearings this morning. In the second hour of our program, why Republican Senator Thom Tillis is a coward and a backstabber. This is an amazing story. Also, Democrats outperformed, flipping an Iowa seat and taking control of the Minnesota Senate. Yesterday was Tuesday. There were some special elections yesterday, one in Iowa, one in Minnesota. I'll give you all the details on those in the second hour of the program, but it's really good news for Democrats going. In our third hour, our single guest today, Michelangelo Signorile, the host on SiriusXM Progress, who follows my program, this program, on Channel 127, is going to drop by to talk about Donald Trump sentencing to death 26 million people and counting. And also our Geeky Science. What if science and ancient wisdom agree that your expectations actually hold real power? So we've got a lot to talk about today. I want to start out with my daily takeover at HartmannReport.com. It's titled Trump's Hostile Takeover of America, the Corporate Raiders' Final Heist. And there's really kind of two parts to this. The first is, how Donald Trump is trying to take apart America. We saw this yesterday, when the Medicaid payment portal was shut to the day. In all, when a federal judge put illegal impoundment of federal funds on hold until February 3rd, so we've got a 1-week reprieve. But it wasn't just Medicaid. The Trump administration shut down Pell Grants, federally supported student loans, veterans homeless shelters, veterans suicide prevention programs, school meals, home heating assistance, housing assistance, food stamps, food for women and infants, children, health, child care, Head Starts, child abuse investigations, rape crisis centers, and including a mind-boggling amount of scientific research into things like curing cancer. Now, why would Trump shut all this stuff down? Of him to destroy the American government. But it doesn't appear, it may be that he's doing this because Putin told him to, but it really appears that he's doing this because the right-wing billionaires told him to. And so why do the right-wing billionaires want to shut down the federal government? I think the answer is very simple. They don't want to pay their damn taxes. You can come up with all kinds of elaborate explanations. Back in 1951, Russell Kirk wrote this book, The Conservative Mind, in which he posited that, if more than half of America ever reached the middle class, and back at that time it was around 45%, then, women would forget their place in the home, young people would lose respect for their elders, and black people and other minorities, including gay people, would start demanding equality with white men, God forbid, right? And this became basically the basis of the Reagan administration, of Reagan's attack on the middle class. His efforts to take down unions, his efforts to lower taxes on billionaires and raise taxes 18 times on average working people, taxing Social Security, taxing tips, all these other things that Reagan did. But I don't think there's very many billionaires anymore who really think that it's dangerous to have a middle class that's more than half of America. We went from about 15% of America being in the middle class in the 1930s, early 1930s, to about 60%, a little over 60% of Americans being in the middle class in 1981 when Reagan came into office. Now it's less than 50%. Some numbers suggest 45%, some 47%. As the result of 40 years of Reaganomics, 44 years now of Reaganomics. But there's, I think, a much simpler explanation. Back in 1980, David Koch, the late David Koch, ran for vice president on the Libertarian Party's platform. And, which basically called for the repeal of all federal programs, the end of public schools, the end of Medicare, the end of Social Security, the end of the Environmental Protection Agency, the end of the Internal Revenue Service, the end of all taxation, including capital gains taxation. Ending the Occupational Safety and Health Act, ending the FAA, ending the FDA, all of these things. In other words, gut the federal government And they wanted to do it basically the same way that Mitt Romney's company gutted Clear Channel back when I worked there. Louise and I moved from Vermont to Oregon in what, 2004, 2005? I forget the year. It was one of those 2 years. Because we were on Air America, noon to 3 Eastern time. And a local station here in Portland, it's 9 to noon Pacific time, a local station here in Portland, KPOJ, offered me a morning show and a free studio to do my national show. And, which was pretty important to us back then because there wasn't a lot of money in progressive talk radio. And so we took it. We took the gig. And so for 4 or 5 years, I did 6 hours of nonstop radio every morning, 6 to 9 a.m. local show, 9 a.m. to noon national show. And so I was there in a Clear Channel station when Mitt Romney took over Clear Channel, his company, Bain Capital, took over Clear Channel, and just stripped the company. I mean, we had 20, 30 employees there, and by the time they were done, they were down to, a half a dozen or maybe a dozen at the most. It was, they laid off everybody in the newsroom except one person. I mean, it was a bloodbath. That's what corporate raiders do. They strip, and they stripped Clear Channel down to the point where the company was bankrupt. And then they basically sold it off. I mean, they kind of sold it off for parts, as it were. Well, that's what Trump is doing to the federal government. And this is the Project 2025 plan. And frankly, I think it's David Koch's platform, which is let's just get rid of the federal government. Billionaires don't need the federal government. They just need a court system to enforce their patents and copyrights. And jails to keep people safe, jails and police. And that's all David Koch wanted was, the army, the jails, and the courts. And I really think that that's the direction they're going. But here's the wild thing. In the process of heading down this road, Donald Trump is breaking laws. He, just in the last 3 days, he broke the Impoundment Control Act, which was passed in the 1970s, 74, I believe, after Nixon tried to shut down public housing, the Clean Water Act, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act that funded schools in poor districts, the school desegregation efforts, mass transit programs for cities, and health and research and healthcare programs for low-income people. Nixon refused to pay for any of those things, even though Congress had appropriated the money. So Congress passed this law saying you have to do it. And in fact, you can't withhold any funds until Congress has been in session 45 days and you've notified them of your intent. Well, Trump violated that law. He violated the Pendleton Civil Service Act of 1883 and the Civil Service Reform Act when he fired all the prosecutors in the Department of Justice who had tried to prosecute him. And he violated the Inspector General Act of 1978, which was also put into place responding to Nixon's corruption, which says that you have to notify Congress 30 days in advance before getting rid of an Inspector General. So here we have Donald Trump breaking 3 laws and nobody holding him to account. This is a disaster for democracy. It is gutting our government the same way that the Clear Channel got gutted by Mitt Romney's company. And I think it's, because he's violating the law and telling all the rest of us, hey, I dare you to do something about it. These are the first steps on the path toward dictatorship. We need to be paying careful attention to this and be freaked out by it.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And Democrats need to be raising holy hell, and we'll speak to that after the break. Stay with us. It's 15 minutes past the hour. Got it. And welcome back. Peter in Winchester, Virginia. Hey, Peter, thanks for watching us on YouTube. What's on your mind today?
I have a couple of questions. The first question is, do you think that the judges can effectively enforce their decisions against Trump?
Which decisions?
Is there any way he can stop them?
Which decisions?
Any decisions that they make that are against him.
Well, Trump has already said that he's going to ignore the law. I mean, I just laid out 3 specific laws, and there are others, by the way, that he's broken already. I mean, it shouldn't surprise us that the guy who's been convicted of 34 felonies is breaking the law as soon as he gets into the White House. He's also breaking the emoluments clause, which is law, federal law. So whether, if there was a court decision against him, would it be possible for him to ignore it? Yeah, sure. And I think he will. I absolutely think he will.
Okay. Do you think that the Republicans have essentially ended the two-party system?
They're trying to. They're trying to create a single-party state. They're trying to turn Russia into Hungary or turn America into Hungary or Russia. That's pretty clear.
And how come there's no Democratic pushback against the oligarch 10-year-long assault on trying to overthrow the government?
Well, I think there has been some pushback, but I agree with your concern, Peter, and like I said, I'm going to talk about that after the break. This is a big issue, and Democrats need to get with the plan. Peter, thanks for the call. Jessica in Chicago. Hey, Jessica, thanks for watching Free Speech. What's up?
Hi, Tom. Happy New Year. Happy Chinese New Year.
Yeah, that's right. Today is Chinese New Year, or the Lunar New Year, I guess it's more properly called.
Lunar Year, yes. And if you text it out to a friend, there will be fireworks.
Uh-huh.
So the madman is out of control. He works in the dark hours, releasing threatening proposals he thinks he can sneak in, breaking the laws, breaking them with trillions of dollars of funds held up for our federal programs, and firing federal workers by email, giving them a threat that if they don't take the deal by February 6th, they lose it, making sure they're afraid, so they give in.
Right.
So I have so much to say. And I want to say, and B to the S, about the White House outage, the power outage, so no one could get paid through the portals. And why he's distracting us with his migrant arrests. And by the way, these airplanes, these flights out, the military flights were over $800 million. So he's spending everything he can. He sends these poor migrants handcuffed, no air conditioning, no humanity. So, Tom, what I'm seeing in Chicago, our news has really picked up on this. Our regular news shows these ridiculous arrests. And so it takes 10 to 20 ICE agents on site. They arrest one migrant. The first one they arrested, they showed this lonely man, little man, in his T-shirt, surrounded by ICE agents. And he was, oh, darn it, he was pulled out of his house with Christmas lights. But the second arrest, everyone can watch on the Daily Show. It is kind of silly. The migrant says to Dr. Phil, "You're Dr. Phil," and he goes, "How do you know me? How do you know me?"
Yeah, I saw you on TV. Yeah, I saw it. Jessica, thanks for the call. I'm waiting for a migrant wearing a Hispanics for Trump T-shirt to get arrested. Thanks, Jessica. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. Human beings have a couple of unique characteristics. The first is that we can be very tender and loving and concerned and caring toward people we perceive as being our group, us. We can also be extraordinarily violent against people that we consider to be them, if we think of them or this other as a threat. Probably the classic example of this is Adolf Hitler convincing Germans that, Jews were a threat to them and good Germans going along with the Holocaust. Well, this othering is built into our DNA. This is, ancient stuff. And the Republican Party, since the time of Nixon, when he started, picking up the white racist vote after Democrats laid it down in the 60s, the Republicans have been using this to try to other minorities in America as a political strategy. And this is really deadly stuff. There's a whole op-ed about it over at HartmannReport.com. Is othering human nature's deadliest instinct? Check it out.
the doors, took the food from the kids, left the poor on the floor. Said if you can't pay, you don't belong. While his friends count gold and toast to the con. He's tearing it down, brick by brick, ripping the spine from the government quick. Trump's last job, the final heist. Leave the people starving while the billionaires slice.
Indeed, 22 minutes past the hour. So Congressman Sean Casten, a Democrat from Illinois, stood up yesterday and said, if you're a senator right now confirming any Trump nominee who will not unambiguously defend their oath to the Constitution, even if it means standing up to Trump, you are completely misunderstanding the risk at this moment. Trump's nominees continue to get lots and lots of Democratic votes, and they're not asked, or they're refusing to say that they will stand up to Trump. Meanwhile, Adam Kinzinger, the former Republican congressman from Illinois, came out with a video yesterday. He's got a Substack, adamkinzinger.substack.com. He's got a Substack newsletter. He's entitled Emergency Video. And he has a message. This is about 2 minutes. I want to share this with you, though. I cut it down because it's 8 or 10 minutes long. But he's got a message for Democrats that I think we all need to hear. Here's former Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger.
Where are the Democrats? Where is Democratic leadership? This week has been one of the worst weeks for democracy, and I don't know where the Democrats are. But there is no organized message. There's no organized opposition. Pulling security details from people, stopping all grant funding, offering federal employees buyouts. All this stuff is going on. And so you sit there and it's like stuff's coming at you. But pick a few things and message it. Do you feel like there has been a strong Democratic message in opposition to this stuff? What were they doing the day after the election until today? We all knew this stuff was coming. We were hoping we were wrong, but we knew it was coming. So they should have been planning. Why are they home from Washington, D.C. right now? This may be a good time for everybody to go to D.C. and stage dramatic things. Thing about Kash Patel, about the fact that he continues to make threats, about the fact that he just retweeted a video, an AI video of himself using a chainsaw to faces of various leaders in the Senate or the House. A guy that's supposed to be the FBI director. Did you guys even know this? But this has to be a broader thing by the party. I mean, it really feels like, again, left-right hooks, like in a boxing match. Just boom, 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 boom. And you stop fighting back. Well, guess what? If this ends, it's only going to be when the job they want done is done. And Donald Trump has unchecked power. Fight back.
Yeah, it's time to fight back. And actually, it turns out that some Democrats are. This is Axios. There was an emergency meeting that Hakeem Jeffries called in Washington, D.C. yesterday in response to this, basically shutting down these government programs right across the board. And they got together and they said, okay, here's what we're going to do. And Axios is reporting on this. Number one, Jeffries' messaging arm urged House Democrats to hold press conferences and go live on social media. Schumer's Senate Democrats had audibled today's press conference from January 6 pardons to Trump's spending freeze. So, they're going to be talking about audibled. What a terrible word. Schumer's Democrats are going to be talking about all these things. So apparently, I'm not seeing the kind of, really go after them. Well, from some, actually, I am on, in this stuff with Bob Kennedy. So number one, make noise. Yes, Democrats need to be making noise. They need to be making a hell of a lot more noise. Number two, block bills. Senate Democrats filibustered a Republican bill sanctioning the International Criminal Court. Democrats were resigned yesterday that they be jammed on the bill. Now they know they can increase their negotiating position if they stay unified. This is from Axios. Protest votes. Nearly 24 Senate Democrats voted against Sean Duffy's confirmation for Transportation Secretary a day after the chamber voted unanimously to advance his nomination. Why? Because they're saying we're protesting what Trump is doing. And lawsuits. A federal judge blocked Trump's spending freeze plans yesterday afternoon, but all day Democrats were attacking Trump's move. And the lawsuit is going to give them time to create a narrative about the real-world impact of these cuts. Meanwhile, Republican lawmakers are going to be hearing from angry constituents. It seems like Democrats are finally getting it. Keep in mind, I believe it's Sunday. It might be Saturday, but I think it's Sunday. We're going to hold an election, and we're going to, on Monday of next week, we're going to have a brand new DNC director. Hopefully, he will come on this program and speak to us. Democrats need to get their act together here because our country is slipping fast.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
I mean, when former Republican members of Congress are saying, where are the Democrats? I think you know you've got a problem. What say you? I'll pick up your calls right after this. Waking the Witch, Reflections on Women, Magic, and Power by Pam Grossman. This is from the introduction. Witches have always walked among us, populating societies and storyscapes across the globe for thousands of years. From Circe to Hermione, from Morgan Le Marie Laveau, the witch has long existed in the tales we tell about ladies with strange powers who can harm or heal. And although people of all genders have been considered witches, it's a word that is now usually associated with women. Throughout most of history, she has someone to fear, an uncanny other who threatens our safety or manipulates reality for her own mercurial purposes. She's a pariah, a persona non grata, a boogie woman to defeat and discard. Although she's often been deemed a destructive entity, in actuality, a witchy woman has historically been far more susceptible to attack than an inflictor of violence herself. As with other terrifying outsiders, paradoxical as both vicious aggressor and vulnerable prey. Over the past 150 years or so, however, the witch has done another magic trick by turning from a fright into a figure of inspiration. She is now as likely to be the heroine of your favorite TV show as she is its villain. She might show up in the form of your Wiccan co-worker or the beloved musician who gives off a sorcerous vibe in videos or on stage. There's also a chance that she is you, and that witch is an identity you've taken upon yourself for any number of reasons, heartfelt or flippant, public or private. Today, more women than ever are choosing the way of the witch, whether literally or symbolically. They're floating down catwalks and sidewalks in gauzy black clothing and adorning themselves with Pinterest-worthy pentagrams and crystals. They're filling up movie theaters to watch witchy films and gathering in back rooms and backyards to do rituals, consult tarot cards, and set life-altering intentions. They're marching in the streets with Hex the Patriarchy placards and casting spells each month to try to constrain the commander-in-chief. Year after year, articles keep proclaiming it's the season of the witch, as journalists try to wrap their heads around the mushrooming witch trend. And all of this begs the question, why? Why do witches matter? Why are they seemingly everywhere right now? What exactly are they? And why the hell won't they go away? I get asked such things over and over, and you would think that after a lifetime of studying and writing about witches, as well as hosting a witch-themed podcast and being a practitioner of witchcraft myself, my answers would be succinct. In fact, I find that the more I work with the witch, the more complex she becomes. Hers is a slippery spirit. Try to pin her down and she'll only recede further into the dark, deep wood. I do know this for sure, though. Show me your witches, and I'll show you your feelings about women. The fact that the resurgence of feminism and the popularity of the witch are ascending at the same time is no coincidence. The two are reflections of each other. That said, this current witch wave is nothing new. I was a teen in the 1990s, the decade that brought us such pop culture as Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Charmed, and The Craft. Not to mention riot girls and third-wave feminists who taught me that female power could come in a variety of colors and sexualities. I learned that women could lead a revolution while wearing lipstick and combat boots, and sometimes even a cloak. But my own witchly awakening came at an even earlier age. Morganville, New Jersey, where I was raised, was a solidly suburban town, but it retained enough natural land features back then to still feel a little bit scruffy in spots. We had a small patch of woods in our backyard that abutted a horse farm, and the two were separated by a wisp of running water that we could cross via a plank of wood. When we were little, my older sister Emily and I would sometimes venture to the other side where we could feed the horses, an act that still scares me to this day, and pick fistfuls of clover. But the majority of our time was spent on our side of the stream, threading ourselves through the thicket of trees that served as our personal forest. In one corner of the yard, a giant puddle would form whenever it rained, surrounded by a border of ferns. We called this spot our magical place. That it would vanish and then reappear only added to its mystery. It was a portal to the unknown. These woods are where I first remember doing magic, entering that state of deep play where imaginative action becomes reality. I would spend hours out there creating rituals with rocks and sticks, drawing secret symbols in the dirt, losing all track of time. It was a space that felt holy and wild, yet still strangely safe. As we age, we're supposed to stop filling our heads with unicorns are to be traded in for Barbie dolls, though both are mythical creatures to be sure. We lose our tooth fairies, walk away from our wizards. Dragons get slain on the altar of our youth. Most kids grow out of their magic phase. I grew further into mine. My grandma Trudy was a librarian at the West Long Branch Library, which meant I got to spend many a long afternoon lurking between the 001.9 and 135 Dewey Decimal sections, reading about Bigfoot and dream interpretation in Nostradamus. Waking the Witch by Cam Grossman. Did you know that every weekday we send out an email before the show giving you all the topics coming up so you can be fully informed and ready to interact with our program? Or that after the show we send out Sue's Stack, a list of every topic I've discussed along with clickable hot links to every source of information I've shared with you on the air? It's all completely free and available over at thom.tv, THOM.tv. Check it out. So Carolyn Kennedy says Bob Kennedy loves to put little baby chicks and mice in a blender to feed to his eagles.
Just a puppy, but I've seen some wicked sights from politicians hurting pets. Oh, it keeps me up at night. Christy Noem said I was dangerous, so she took me down. Now I'm here to sing the truth about these leader rounds. Do Republicans hate pets and critters? From puppies to birds to helpless little critters. They kick us, they strap us, they light us on fire. Their trail of abuses just keeps climbing. Remember Mid-NC Seamus, that poor dog on the roof. 12 hours of terror, what more do you need as proof? Then there's RFK Jr, blending chicks and mice. For birds of prey he called it sport, but that's just not nice.
Steve King loved a cockfight, said let the feathers fly, while Brandon Phillips kicked his dog and didn't even try to lie. And don't forget Roberts with a shovel in his hand. The neighbor's dog met tragedy. How do they still stand? Republicans hate pets.
Republicans hate pets. I think, it's, yeah. All right, so what's on your mind today? Let's pick up your calls here. Luigi in Pensacola, Florida. Hey, Luigi, what's up?
Hey, Tom, good start with that Kristi Noem deal, because today she opened up her speech. Opened up with the persons of DHS, Homeland Security, saying, started off with a Star Spangled Banner, a prayer, and a song called her a hot mama. That's how she started the deal today. Okay. Anyway, one of them was, I read your thing this morning on Moss Story about, that you had talked. I'm losing it. I'm sorry. About the final flaw of the Dems. You mentioned Chuck Schumer in there and about deadly, tedious stuff. Anyway, I wrote this to Chuck yesterday. I don't want to see you, Mr. Leader, in an empty Senate chamber, glasses hanging on your nose, looking down at your shoes and drilling on. Quite frankly, sir, you look ridiculous, and nobody pays attention to someone not looking into the camera and speaking to them. If you don't want the mantle of leadership, then get the hell out of the way. Give us a more vibrant, younger, and enthusiastic group of folks who are looking forward and not back at the bygone days of my friends across the aisle. We want folks willing to stand up and fight and not be frightened by the Republican boogeyman. And by the way, take Blue Slip Durbin with you on the way out.
I get it.
That was part of it.
Okay, so that was your email to Chuck Schumer. That was a good one, Luigi. We really do need, frankly, new leadership. We need leadership for the 21st century. Somebody, I forget who it was, made this comment a couple of days ago that Kamala Harris and the Democrats ran a great 1990s campaign. The problem is this is 2024, or it was last year.
Sir.
And that just encapsulates everything. Luigi, thank you. That was brilliant. Linda in Houston, Texas. Hey, Linda, what's on your mind today?
And speaking thank you, Tom, for taking my call.
Sure.
And speaking of what Trump is doing, Kevin Roberts wrote a book saying, Taking Back America, Taking Back Washington to Save America. What he's doing is, and he said in his book, he needs to burn down everything and rebuild it again. J.D. Vance wrote the forewords to the book.
Right.
So that's what he's actually doing. And I was listening to Resist a documentary on PBS last night, and I caught the video where the Zionists was the young people. The older people were so afraid of the Germans, they just went like sheep to the slaughter. The younger people said, look, we have nothing to lose. They're going to kill us anyway. We might as well fight back.
Yeah, that was the White Rose Society.
Okay. And so the older people are just in fear. They can't believe it's happening, and it's going to take a younger generation to set out and go, hey, we have nothing to lose. We need to fight back.
Amen. Amen. Very well said, Linda. Thank you very much. And you're absolutely right. In Germany, I mean, there were old people who fought back. Pastor Niemöller, well, he was middle-aged. But, it was Sophie and, well, I'm forgetting her brother's name and I'm forgetting her last name, but there were these two young people, college students, who started the White Rose Society to oppose Hitler. And he ended up, he murdered them brutally by way of punishing them. But there was a massive student movement against Hitler. At least early on in the Reich. This was in the mid-years of the Reich. So yes, young people, it was in the 60s, it was young people who stopped the Vietnam War. It can be done. Thank you, Linda. That was great. Gwyneth in Cleveland, Georgia. Hey, Gwyneth, what's up?
No, it's Glennis.
Oh, Gleneth.
Like Dennis.
with an L. Okay, I'm sorry. So what's up?
That's all right. I'm kind of calling out a frustration and a plea to the Democratic Party. We live in northeast Georgia. We never have a Democrat run in this county because they're too afraid. At the Democratic Party the other night, my husband brought up the thing of, why aren't y'all trying to run a Democrat? Well, you know what they do to them. They terrorize them, and they never even make it to the ballot, which they don't. How are we ever going to win like this?
How do they terrorize them?
Oh, they threaten them. I'll give you an example. It was when Trump was first in office, and our representative was Doug Collins. We called in to complain about something, one of the many things we complained about Trump. We hadn't hung our phone up 30 seconds, and our phone was ringing off the hook of people calling and threatening us, wanting to know what the heck was wrong with us, that we were against Trump and all this policy.
Who had you called?
Doug Collins.
You called your member of Congress?
For something now.
You called your member of Congress and he doxed you?
Yeah, I guess that's what it's called. We don't do internet or anything much.
Yeah.
So it was our home phone.
Oh, that's incredible.
And, you know, and they're right. The people are so terrorized, they never make it to the ballot. So what can you do? I mean, are there no Democrats that are willing to come try in places like we live?
That's incredible. That's incredible. I mean, it's not...
I told you, I've had a gun pointed to my head 5 times. They don't like female ministers either.
Yeah. Wow.
But, you know, my husband keeps talking about with Trump in office again, we need to just sell everything and leave the country. But I keep telling him, but we're at least a pinhole of light here.
Yeah.
And, you know, every pinhole of light can dispel some of the darkness. He's real good about getting people to at least think when he goes to the feed store. He'll get them engaged and talk to them, you know, and they at least make them think about the craziness they're following.
I get
So,
it.
you know, it's a quandary here. How do we win?
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. If you don't at least get in the game, you don't have a chance of winning. But I'm just so distressed to hear that in rural Georgia, if you even put your name on the ballot, that people show up at your house to harass you, that sort of thing.
Yes, and they have no problem with their guns.
Yeah. Wow.
You know, and that's the scary thing. But like I say, I feel like we've got to stay because at least, you know, I've educated a lot of kids here, and they all vote Democrat when they came of age. At least our votes count statewide.
Yeah.
But most of the time, you know, I mean, most of our ballots are left blank because the only name on there is the incumbent Republican good old boy network.
Good grief. Yeah.
You know.
Well,
so,
this is Howard Dean. Howard Dean had fixed this for a while with his 50-state strategy, and that helped get Barack Obama into the White House. But
and we helped get Biden in.
Yeah, but you know, we've got a lot of work to do. Glenna, thank you for sharing that story, and
thank you. Please, somebody with balls behind come to Georgia.
I got it. Glenna, thank you.
Thank
Brilliant.
you so much.
Thank you. Nate in Detroit, Michigan. Hey, Nate, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Good to talk to you again. Before the election, I watched you on Michael Steele's podcast. Mm-hmm. It was fantastic. You're probably going to know where I'm going with this. Since our party can't message itself out of a wet paper bag, and it seems to me that the best people that we need in this moment are the Never Trumpers, the Rick Wilsons, the Michael Steeles, other people from Lincoln Project, the Bulwark, etc. What is stopping bringing these people, it doesn't have to be official, but into some sort of a comms role or advisory role, because we need people who know how to throw and take a punch.
Yeah.
If the Democrats can't do this, it is over.
I know.
It's
I agree.
over.
I agree.
Is it old animosities? Is it?
I think it's a mindset. I really do.
Right.
You know, the Republicans are basically bullies. They're pugnacious. They're you know, there's something about the GOP appeals to bullies, and so you get a lot of bullies, and which can be very successful politically, by the way. And Democrats are people who want to get things done, and they just, you know, hey, can't we just work together and create a better country?
Right, but that's not like.
No, I get it. I get it. We need. I mean, you know, there are some Democrats who are willing to take names and kick ass. You got Bernie Sanders. You got Elizabeth Warren. There's a bunch of them in the House. Jasmine Crockett. I mean, you know, hopefully Hakeem Jeffries. But
I hope so too.
I'm with you, Nate, and you know, and I get it. The people like Michael Steele. I mean, he still calls himself a conservative. Presumably, he still thinks that Social Security should be privatized.
Right.
But hey, let's learn some lessons from these people. I'm with you, Nate. Thank you very much. 45 minutes past the hour.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Helping you win the water cooler wars. I'll be right back with your calls. Stay with us. Welcome back. Alan in San Diego. Hey, Alan, what's up? Alan?
How you doing, Tom?
Hey, I'm
hey,
fine.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Hey, listen, I want to ask you, I want to ask you something. You probably touched on this already. Last week, I heard just a representative. His name is Sheldon Whitehouse.
Yeah, he's a senator, yes, from Rhode Island.
Yeah, okay. Now, he got up there after he spoke to Pam London,
Bondi?
or something. Yeah, up there, and Chuck Schumer was right behind him. And he made a urgent warning to the American public. He said, listen, everybody has to stop saving your wallets, and he said because the Trump administration is about to loot the American Treasury, and they're going to pollute the American air, the air and everything, which is drill, baby, drill. He said something like that, And I was like saying, wait a minute. I mean, I never really heard anybody say that before. He's just being straight out.
Yeah, Sheldon Whitehouse is a good guy. He's been on this program a bunch of times. He's a very good senator.
Yeah, but he was saying this stuff just straight out. He's being real blunt. And I know that the media don't say nothing about this, hardly.
No.
You know what he said?
No. He could say it all day long, and the New York Times will never report on it. CNN will never carry it. Yeah, you're right, Alan. You're right. This is the tragedy of corporate media.
Yeah, and also too, this thing that gets me now. I really don't get this. For the past year, for instance, like you be in a store, a nice chain store, and the store is always crowded, and the next year, they said, we got to close the store up. I said, wait, what? I mean, some of these stores, the retail stores, they're closing up, but I don't understand why, because the places are always crowded.
Well, that's a more complicated thing. I mean, you've got one of the problems is that you've got these venture capital firms or these private equity firms that are buying which is what Bain Capital did to Clear Channel, what I was talking about in the previous block. Who are buying companies up and just basically stripping them for parts and sucking all the money out and then letting them go bankrupt. That just happened to one of the national restaurant chains. Forgive me, I don't recall which one, but it just went bankrupt. It was destroyed by private equity. This is a real common thing. So what you're looking at is predatory capitalism run amok, Alan. And we haven't. Reagan stopped enforcing the laws against monopolies, and so now we've got monopolies, and on top of monopolies, we've got this incredible predatory system called private equity that frankly I don't think should be allowed to exist. I mean, it's destructive to our business ecosystem, and it's destructive to our country. And like I said, I saw it firsthand at Clear Channel when Bain Capital came in and just it drained the company of all its resources, laid off all its people, bankrupted it, walked away with millions, and left a husk of a company behind. This is happening every day all across America, Alan.
Yeah, well, something else too. Now I just heard this week that Bridgestone in Kentucky, Kentucky or somewhere, they're closing down.
Yeah.
They're laying people off.
Yeah, I don't know that that's a private equity thing, but it is happening all over the country. But get ready. I mean, we're looking now at 2 straight months of consumer sentiment going down. I have a feeling we're getting ready for a serious recession. Alan, thank you for the call. It's 10 minutes before the hour. I'll be back with you in 60 seconds. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. Did you know that the ancient Roman Republic, which for 480 years was actually a democratic republic before Julius Caesar kind of ended the democracy phase and replaced it with the autocracy phase, that they were brought down by a very small group of very rich people. The richest man in ancient Rome was Marcus Licinius Crassus. He was the richest guy, the billionaire of Rome. And he frankly hated the Roman free bread for all welfare system. It was being paid for with his tax dollars, after all. So him and Pompey the Great and a few other rich guys got together, and they basically crashed Rome. They turned it into an oligarchy and then into a tyranny. And the parallels to what Trump is doing right now are absolutely shocking. There's an article about it over at HartmannReport.com titled American Caesar, Trump's Path to Power Mirrors Rome's Darkest Days. Check it out.
crisp all day. A mystery unfolded in the strangest way. Robert Kennedy Jr. with the prank to play left the bear cub's body in the park's dismay. Bear with me, the story's wild and strange, from the Hudson Valley to the city's range. A tale of pranks and politics entwined. Will justice find its way, or remain confined? Will justice find its way, or remain confined?
All the senators saying, I've known Bobby my whole life. We grew up together. It's no surprise he keeps bird of prey as pets because he himself is a predator. And then she goes on to talk about how his crusade against served him financially, although all of his kids are vaccinated, and how he would put chicks and mice in a blender to feed to his hawks. Yuck. All right, back to your calls here. Andre in Chicago. Hey, Andre, what's up?
Hey, good afternoon, Tom. How you doing today, sir?
I am fine, thank you.
You know,
what's up?
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Hey, Tom, you know, Donald Trump and his MAGA congressmen and supporters have declined morally, and the Democrats need to point that out. Now, I don't know if Matt Gaetz' family out him, but Hegseth's mother, Kennedy's siblings, Donald Trump's brother and niece, all of them have came out against these candidates, but yet the Republicans, those MAGA people, have pushed the family values aside and chose Trump over the family. You know, if your family say you bad, you bad. That's the way I see it.
I think you're right, Andre.
There could be no better judge of character than your family. So if the family couldn't serve as a character witness, we in trouble. The Democrats, they just never would have done a good job of pointing out the immorality of those Republicans and what they do and how they have compromised family values, law and order, tough on crime. They have compromised all of those things in the name of Donald Trump, and they need to point that out. They can't sit on their hands and think that the Republicans and those MAGA people are automatically going to do what's right. They're going to have to be forced to do right just like they did pre-civil rights movement, Tom.
Yep, I spot on. That was a great rant, Andre, and I completely agree with every word of it. Thank you very much, or largely agree. Rick in Milton, Delaware. Hey, Rick, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I'm a first-time caller.
Well, thank you.
And I think I have something we could unite all of us with. If you remember, in the 60s, there was the peace sign and protests against the Vietnam War.
Yeah, we had a logo.
I wore that, and that peace sign meant a whole lot to a whole lot of people.
Yeah.
That peace sign needs to come back and represent us Democrats. We need to all wear a peace sign, whether it's a hat or a T-shirt or even a necklace. I have ordered a peace sign necklace that I will wear, and if people ask me about it, I will tell you, if you're with us, you should wear one too. And that way I can identify you anywhere you are. So that's a good thing for us. The thing is, it's against Trump. It's a sign that we are against Trump and that we are united by using peace. Instead of giving the middle finger to these people, we should be giving them the peace sign. And it makes them angry when we do this. They get very upset. They are expecting us to give them the middle finger. Give them the peace sign. They'll get very upset about it. Yeah. And the other thing is, too, I have a problem. I'm a gay man, married, and I have a problem with the word daddy. Why is Trump using the word daddy, and why is all the people using the word daddy? Daddy is a gay term, and it always has been for the past 40 years that I know of. I am considered a daddy. I'm married. I'm an older man who is married to a younger man, and we are called daddies because the daddy takes care of the younger man. Could you tell me why they adopted a gay term?
Yes, I can. First of all, with regard to the peace sign, my only concern, I agree with you, we need a logo. My only concern with the peace sign is that you've got a bunch of people who are opposed to our involvement in Ukraine who are arguing that we need peace. So a little ambiguity there. But years ago, George Lakoff, the scientist out of UC Berkeley, I think it is, pointed out that Democrats view their job, view politics as the nurturing family, that the goal of government is to be the nurturing family for all of us. Republicans view the role of government as being the strict father. Republicans want daddy. They want somebody who's going to, and Mel Gibson said this 3 or 4 days ago when Trump went to California. Mel Gibson came out in front of the cameras and said, daddy's here and he's going to take off his belt. In other words, daddy's going to punish us, right? Tucker Carlson came out and said, Daddy is going to take care of these teenage girls. He was referring to the Democratic Party, and give them a whooping or something like that, So that's what they're doing is Republicans are asserting their desire for an authoritarian leader. That's what's going on. So.
Okay.
I hope that yeah, I get it. It's a gay phrase. Frankly, I didn't know that, but that's fascinating. Thank you, Rick, for educating us all, and thanks for your first call. I hope to hear from you again from Milton, Delaware. It's we're hitting the top of the hour here. I'll be back with you on the other side. Why GOP Senator Thom Tillis is a coward and a backstabber, and some good news on elections yesterday. I'll tell you about that right after this.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is The Storm is Here, an American Crucible by Luke Mogelson. This is from the introduction. Hoping to stave off an encroaching despair on the morning of January 7th, 2021, I left my hotel in Washington, D.C. and took a taxi to the Lincoln Memorial. I was looking for sanctuary, and an open-air chamber designed to resemble a temple seemed a place to find it as any. I'd been there once or twice before, passing between the marble columns. You weren't humbled into silence as much as welcomed by it. When I arrived this time, however, the monument was closed. Squad cars were pulling up, officers expelling a mob. Many of the people wore red MAGA hats and Trump 2020 shirts. I asked someone what had happened. It seemed that a woman had been posing for pictures with a Gadsden flag, "Don't tread on me," below a hissing snake on a yellow field, when an officer advised that such displays were not allowed. A fracas had ensued, and now the Trump supporters converged at the bottom of the steps, the same steps from which, in 1963, Martin Luther King delivered his "I Have a Dream" speech, and the crowd then began calling the officers Nazis, Marxists, and pigs. Young men in blazers waved their middle fingers. "Christ is king," they chanted. "Aren't we the pussies?" a little bald man asked. "Honestly, we're not overrunning them?" "That's when they start executing people," said a woman in her 30s, glaring hatefully at the police. It occurred to me that some of the officers impassively absorbing this abuse probably had friends in the hospital. Less than 24 hours earlier, I had watched Donald Trump tell a similar, though much larger, mob assembled on the far end of the reflecting pool that extended behind us, quote, "If you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore," end quote. Thousands of people, many armed with bats, clubs, whips, and other rudimentary weapons, had proceeded to march up the National Mall. At the Capitol, they had wounded around 180 law enforcement agents, smashed through doors and windows, and frantically hunted for politicians determined to sabotage the peaceful transition of power. Some carried nooses, barked racial epithets, assaulted journalists, and called for the vice president to be lynched. On the Senate floor, I watched Trump supporters ransack desks and steal confidential documents. A bare-chested man in a horned headdress wielding a spear pronounced Mike Pence an effing traitor. Then he led the rioters in prayer. An officer who suffered a stroke after being maced would later die. Now it was not the police, but the Trump supporters who were outraged. Once again, they believed they'd been wronged. Once again, their sense of injury was blistering. The woman with the Gadsden flag was a pastor from Los Angeles. "I know that had to be Antifa," she said of the attack on the Capitol. "I know it did, because everyone here," she gestured at the livid crowd berating the police, "there's such a spirit of community." She began to weep. "How dare they?" she demanded of the officers. "What is wrong with this country? This is not my America. I don't understand." That made two of us. I could think of only one question to ask. Where do we go from here? The pastor wiped her tears. Her suffering was vast. "I will tell you this," she sobbed. "I will not turn the other cheek to what's not right. This is not right. This is not right." The first epidemic I reported on was in West Africa in 2014. Although Ebola was far more deadly and contagious than COVID-19, the international response is inadequate. Liberia's largest slum, a dense warren of crude squatter dwellings in a narrow peninsula that jutted into the Atlantic from downtown Monrovia, was a formidable early hot zone. Below a canopy of rusty sheet metal, some 80,000 denizens lacked running water, relieved themselves in the cramped gaps between walls, and repurposed detritus as a bulwark against eroding riverbanks. As the virus wiped out whole families, the Liberian military sealed off the encampments with ramparts and barbed wire. Gunships patrolled the coast. Crime spiked. Panic spread. Soldiers fired on people trying to escape. The community looked doomed. After 10 days, emissaries from the slum prevailed on the government to end the blockade. In exchange, they agreed to implement a suite of precautions, identifying and isolating sick people in their homes, tracking down their recent contacts, and vigilantly monitoring each individual for a period of 3 weeks, the maximum amount of time that the virus was known to incubate before manifesting symptoms. Normally, all this should have been the responsibility of medical professionals and epidemiologists. In the slum, though, the job fell to locals. Against most expectations, within a month, the Ebola outbreak had been contained. Monrovia was not an aberration. In the absence of rescue by the world and their own governments, which were among the poorest on the earth, West Africans proved remarkably adept at helping one another to survive. Neighborhoods mobilized, healthcare workers volunteered, secluded villages formed ad hoc task forces to oversee sanitation, quarantines, and mandatory social distancing. Education was crucial. Initially, conspiracy theories abounded. Some West Africans embraced a rumor that the virus was a ploy to solicit foreign donor money. Spiritual healers proffered metaphysical explanations for the vagaries of death and illness. In one remote hamlet I visited in Sierra Leone, the chief had been told that somewhere a commercial plane had crashed. For every passenger who died, a villager must as well. The book, The Storm is Here, by Luke Mogelson.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome to the second hour of our program. This is just a weird story. You'll recall when Pete Hegseth was put forward as Trump's nominee for Secretary of Defense, there were all these accusations, that he had terrified his second wife, that he was threatening, not that he physically hit her, but that she was afraid of him, that she had safe words, she had an escape plan. This is on top of, his having been unfaithful with his second wife, with the woman who became his first wife, with the woman who became his second wife, and then being unfaithful with his second wife, with the woman who became his third wife. In fact, they had a baby while he was still married to his second wife. All that kind of stuff, plus his alcoholism and going to strip clubs, running two small Koch brothers funded, apparently, or supported right-wing veterans groups into the ground, all this kind of stuff. But at the very end, the day before his testimony and the final vote, his sister-in-law, who is Danielle Hegseth, his sister-in-law on his brother's side, his brother's wife, submitted a sworn affidavit under oath, under penalty of perjury, to all of the senators who were going to be voting on this thing, on Pete Hegseth. And in that affidavit, she says that she has been assured that, she said, this is what she says in the affidavit. She says, I trusted what Samantha told me, most critically because it was consistent with what I personally observed of Hegseth's erratic behavior and aggressive behavior over many years. She goes on to say, I have been assured that making this public statement. Now keep in mind, this woman is hanging herself out to dry. She's getting death threats now from right-wingers. She said, I have been assured that making this public statement will ensure that certain senators who are still on the fence will vote against Hegseth confirmation. But for that assurance, I would not subject myself or others referred to in this statement to the public scrutiny this statement is likely to cause. In other words, some Republican senator came to Danielle Hegseth and said, if you will tell your story under oath to me and my colleagues, I at least will become the vote that prevents Hegseth from becoming our Secretary of Defense. I will do that, and I promise you that. And so, based on that promise from this Republican senator, Danielle Hegseth, the wife of Pete's brother, Danielle Hegseth, who saw all the horrors of his marriages, Danielle Hegseth comes out and says, yes, I saw these things. He's a drunk. He's a wife abuser. I saw it with my own two eyes. I'm saying this under oath. I swear this on, in front of God and the world, and you can prosecute me if I'm lying. And subjects herself to threats of violence against her family, to being doxxed, to being outed, to being harassed. She literally put her life on the line because this one Republican senator promised her that he would change his vote if she did this. Again, this is what she wrote in her under oath sworn statement. I have been assured that making this public statement will ensure that certain senators who are still on the fence will vote against Hegseth's nomination. But for that assurance, I would not subject myself or others referred to in this statement to the public scrutiny this statement is likely to cause. Now we know, according to reporting from the Wall Street Journal, who that Republican senator was. Now, you might think it was Susan Collins or Lisa Murkowski, two of the small handful of female senators on the Republican side, because they both voted against Hegseth. Turns out it wasn't. You might think it was Mitch McConnell, the only other Republican who voted against Hegseth's nomination. It wasn't. It turns out, according to the Wall Street Journal, it was the senator from North Carolina, Thom Tillis, who spells his name the same way I do, which is kind of embarrassing. So here you've got Thom Tillis, the Republican senator from North Carolina, going to Danielle Hegseth, and or at least I think we can infer this, according to the Wall Street Journal. Well, here's what the Wall Street Journal wrote. Tillis personally assured Danielle Hegseth on a call on January 19th, witnessed by two other people, that if she signed the statement testifying that she believed her former brother-in-law, Pete Hegseth, had an alcohol abuse problem and was abusive to his second wife, it would carry weight and potentially move 3 votes, his own, along with the votes of Senators Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski. And then the Wall Street Journal goes on to say, in a statement, Tillis did not dispute the Wall Street Journal's reporting about the call. And yet, how did Thom Tillis vote? He voted to confirm Hegseth. In the end, Thom Tillis became a craven coward, folding like a lawn chair under the weight of the glare of Donald Trump. This is how authoritarian leaders, this is how dictators get their way even when everyone knows it's wrong. I guarantee you there was not a single Republican who voted for Pete Hegseth who didn't know that he should not be defense secretary. You could not pay attention, you could not pay the smallest amount of attention to the many charges that were made that were verified on the record, many of which Hegseth admitted to, without knowing that this guy should not be the guy with the nuclear codes. This guy should not be the guy who gets woken up in the middle of the night and has to make the decision about whether to drop a nuclear bomb on Beijing because they just attacked Taiwan, or whether it's time to launch the missiles against Russia because they just invaded Finland. Or, go to the president and make that recommendation. This guy should not be in this position. And Thom Tillis just hung this woman out to dry. The cowardice, the rank, naked, pathetic cowardice of Thom Tillis and these other Republicans who, as I said, all knew this guy was unqualified to be Secretary of Defense, is shocking. And yet it's not. This is what the entire Republican Party has done. They have joined the cult. Meanwhile, on the Democratic side, things are looking up. There were special elections last night in Minnesota and Iowa. These were state elections. These were not for federal seats. These were for the Iowa Senate and for the Minnesota Senate as well. And here's where it gets really interesting. In Iowa, there was this special election, and the Democrat, a Democrat by the name of Zimmer, beat the Republican Whittington by 51.8 to 48.2%. Now, this is in a district, keep in mind, the Democrat won by 3 points, but this is in a district that Trump carried by 21 points. That's a 24-point shift. A 24-point shift in 2 months. Well, 3 months, I guess, from the beginning of November, December, January. A 24-point shift toward the Democrats. And it was so dramatic that the Democrat actually won, which, is a big deal in Iowa right now. Now, in Minnesota, something very similar happened, although the Democrat didn't win. But here in Minnesota, you've got a Democrat, Doran Clark, who beat the Republican, Abigail Walters, 91 to 8%. Now, keep in mind, this is Minnesota, right? And this is a Democratic district. And so no surprise that a Democrat won. But here's what's important. Harris, this person won by a, 91 minus 8? 80, 3? Yeah, I think. This person won by an 83-point margin. Doran Clark. Kamala Harris only won that district by a 68-point margin. So again, we're seeing an almost 20-point change away from Republicans and toward Democrats in the first two consequential or, significant special elections of 2025. Donald Trump right now has the lowest approval rating of any president in recent history at this point in their presidency. And I predict it's going to go downhill from here. I'm looking at 2026 with tremendous optimism. I don't think this Trump dynasty is going to last. And I'm I get it. The Democrats have not been out there yelling and screaming like I want them to. And, we've got this election this weekend for the chair of the Democratic Party. And, my vote is for Ben Wickler, but I don't have a vote because I'm not one of those, hot shots, big shots in the DNC. But we'll see. I don't think this is going to last for Trump. I really don't.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
It's the hour. What's on your mind? I'll pick up your calls right after this. And welcome back. Nancy in Huntsville, Alabama. Hey, Nancy, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Happy Wednesday to you.
Thank you. Back at you.
My question is, I wonder if you think that the only way this is going to end is when the maggots come home to roost.
What do you mean?
When they realize their vote took money out of their pockets, cost them their jobs, their loved ones died, and all the other lovelities that are coming with this administration. I just think they're going to look around and they can't point fingers at us because we're not in there doing anything. We can't stop it.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I just think
Go ahead, Nancy. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Well, I just think Karma's going to be a bitch.
Yeah.
And that's their method of solving things. And they're just going to be so pissed. Mike Pence is an example. They didn't care that he was one of them.
Yeah. Yeah, or that he almost got killed,
I don't think they're going to stop. They're going to go turn around and about face and come marching right back to the people they voted for. And that's how I see it ending.
Yeah. I hope you're right, Nancy. My guess is that what we're seeing in these two elections that I just reported on, where we saw, roughly 20-point swings toward Democrats in districts, a Republican district and a Democratic district. I think what those suggest is that the undecided voters, the middle of the road voters, the swing voters, the unaffiliated voters, which is a little over a third of all voters in America, are souring on Trump and the Republicans, realizing now finally, exactly what they're all about, and they're going to the Democrats. I don't think, though, that Trump's base, the hardcore maggots, the ones who love to wear the red hats and Camp Auschwitz T-shirts and stuff like that, I don't think there's any hope for them. I don't think that as long as Donald Trump is on this earth, and I'm not wishing him ill, I think as long as he's around, as long as he's playing an active role as a cult leader, they're going to stay in the cult. It's really hard to break people out of a cult, Nancy. It's a real challenge.
Even if they've lost everything, they can't. They literally can't afford to eat. They can't save their own lives, their own health.
I get it, but Trump will figure out a way to blame it on. These people, they live in a bubble. I mean, you should watch Fox News for a couple of hours one evening. You'll see what I'm talking about. It's just
good luck with that.
Yeah, it's just crazy. I mean, they live in an information bubble. They've got right-wing publications, and now the White House just gave press credentials to Breitbart and to Steve Bannon's War Room podcast. I mean, they're bringing in all the riffraff. They're bringing in all the right-wing, the professional right-wing haters into the White House press room, and I just don't. I don't see how we can wake up the base, the Republican base. And frankly, I don't think we need to. I think what we need to do is get those swing voters and bring them back. And that's why, we were able in Iowa to actually win a state Senate seat, in a district that went overwhelmingly. I mean, over 20 points for Trump. And suddenly a Democrat is winning it. So I think that's good news, Nancy, and I understand what you're saying, and I get it. I just don't. I think it's hopeless. I really do. Converting the base. I mean, I know a couple of these people, and they're convinced that Donald Trump is the second coming of Christ. I mean, or something close to it. Nancy, I got to run, but thank you. And they're also convinced that as a white supremacist, he's their guy, and in fact, he is. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. America is suffering from an epidemic of bullying. And one of the things we know is that culture, including bullying, flows from the top down. We've seen studies where when issues of for example, being gay or transgender are being debated in the public, gay and transgender kids in school are more likely to be bullied. When racial issues are being discussed, people of minority races are more likely to be bullied. Well, now we've got a man who has literally built his career on being a bully, Donald Trump, as president, or was president, as candidate. And he is driving this insane bullying campaign and using it as a political weapon across the United States. And it's contagious. It's dangerous. There's an entire article about it over at HartmannReport.com titled America's New Epidemic, A Nation Overrun by Bullies. Check it out.
They told us a story.
24 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Michael in Gainesville, Florida. Hey, Michael, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, hi, Tom. There's so much going on. You mentioned Thom Tillis is you're going to describe why he's a backstabber in the coming hour. And when things get too bushy, you're a great guy to go to because you go right to the taproot. And one of the things that you have discussed over time is the dire consequences of our biased, colonialized version of evolution that we teach that optimizes by survival of the fittest. And I think that affects, the libertarian perspective significantly as far as their intentional dismantling of government. I mean, after all, if you think that natural law of nature was truly based on competitional survival of fittest, that might be your conclusion. And it also affects education significantly in the aspect that, all kids should be able, if you're able to get an A or a B, there's no reason for you not to be able to get an A or a B. Under the U.S. Constitution, I'd be interested in your opinion on this because I know you're an expert on that as well. In pursuit of happiness, no child wants to be an F, D, or even a C student. And if you're able to get an A or a B, why don't we spend the time and invest the time? I think the reason we don't is that colonialized separating of the wheat from the chaff kind of attitude, but no child is chaff, okay? And so there is even our perspective of the races.
Michael, I can
derive from.
No, if I can interrupt you,
there is no race.
I see a break coming, and you were asking me a question, so I would like to answer. I completely agree with you. I was in Northern Australia back in 1999, or no, it was in 2001, and up in the Lockhart River Valley, and with a fellow who was running for kids in distress, and we visited a public school, and it was all Aboriginal kids, and we were out watching them play basketball, and the basketball game went back and forth, who was winning, which side was winning, until the score was even. Both sides had the exact same score, and that was when they ended the game. These Aboriginal kids believed that the goal of the game was to play to a tie, and they kept playing until they hit the tie. because they believed that everybody should be able to win. And in the school, they were teaching very much like that. It was not a grading environment. It was a collaborative environment, and the kids participated in teaching each other. And it was absolutely brilliant. And so this is deeply embedded in our culture, Michael.
Sure, merit. Get the word merit in real quick if you could.
Yeah.
It doesn't get rid of merit. They all
merit is being terribly abused. You know,
they get the A.
Yeah, we all
want it.
We all have merit in our own ways, but this whole merit-based, this is BS. This stuff that the tech pros are selling us. Michael, thank you. That was very well put. I appreciate the call. 27 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls on the other side of the break.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Speaking the truth, Donald Trump would really rather you didn't know. I'll be right back with you on the other side of this break. Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is The Storm is Here, An American Crucible by Luke Mogelson. This is from the introduction. Hoping to stave off an encroaching despair on the morning of January 7th, 2021, I left my hotel in Washington, D.C. and took a taxi to the Lincoln Memorial. I was looking for sanctuary, and an open-air chamber designed to resemble a temple seemed as likely a place to find it as any. I'd been there once or twice before, passing between the marble columns. You weren't humbled into silence as much as welcomed by it. When I arrived this time, however, the monument was closed. Squad cars were pulling up, officers expelling a braying mob. Many of the people wore red MAGA hats and Trump 2020 shirts. I asked someone what had happened. It seemed that a woman had been posing for pictures with a Gadsden flag, "Don't tread on me," below a hissing snake on a yellow field, when an officer advised that such displays were not allowed. A fracas had ensued, and now the Trump supporters converged at the bottom of the steps, the same steps from which, in 1963, Martin Luther King delivered his "I Have a Dream" speech, and the crowd then began calling the officers Nazis, Marxists, and pigs. Young men in blazers waved their middle fingers. "Christ is king," they chanted. "Aren't we the pussies?" a little bald man asked. "Honestly, we're not overrunning them?" "That's when they start executing people," said a woman in her 30s, glaring hatefully at the police. It occurred to me that some of the officers impassively absorbing this abuse probably had friends in the hospital. Less than 24 hours earlier, I had watched Donald Trump tell a similar, though much larger mob assembled on the far end of the reflecting pool that extended behind us, quote, "If you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore," end quote. Thousands of people, many armed with bats, clubs, whips, and other rudimentary weapons, had proceeded to march up the National Mall. At the Capitol, they had wounded around 180 law enforcement agents, smashed through doors and windows, and frantically hunted for politicians determined to sabotage the peaceful transition of power. Some carried nooses, barked racial epithets, assaulted journalists, and called for the vice president to be lynched. On the Senate floor, I watched Trump supporters ransack desks and steal confidential documents. A bare-chested man in a horned headdress wielding a spear pronounced Mike Pence an effing traitor. Then he led the rioters in prayer. An officer who suffered a stroke after being maced would later die. Now it was not the police, but the Trump supporters who were outraged. Once again, they believed they'd been wronged. Once again, their sense of injury was blistering. The woman with the Gadsden flag was a pastor from Los Angeles. "I know that had to be Antifa," she said of the attack on the Capitol. "I know it did, because everyone here," she gestured at the livid crowd berating the police, "there's such a spirit of community." She began to weep. "How dare they?" she demanded of the officers. "What is wrong with this country? This is not my America. I don't understand." That made two of us. I could think of only one question to ask. Where do we go from here? The pastor wiped her tears. Her suffering was vast. "I will tell you this," she sobbed. "I will not turn the other cheek to what's not right. This is not right. This is not right." The first epidemic I reported on was in West Africa in 2014. Although Ebola was far more deadly and contagious than COVID-19, The international response is inadequate. Liberia's largest slum, a dense warren of crude squatter dwellings in a narrow peninsula that jutted into the Atlantic from downtown Monrovia, was a formidable early hot zone. Below a canopy of rusty sheet metal, some 80,000 denizens lacked running water, relieved themselves in the cramped gaps between walls, and repurposed detritus as a bulwark against eroding riverbanks. As the virus wiped out whole families, the Liberian military sealed off the encampments with ramparts and barbed wire. Gunships patrolled the coast. Crime spiked. Panic spread. Soldiers fired on people trying to escape. The community looked doomed. After 10 days, emissaries from the slum prevailed on the government to end the blockade. In exchange, they agreed to implement a suite of precautions, identifying and isolating sick people in their homes, tracking down their recent contacts, and vigilantly monitoring each individual for a period of 3 weeks, the maximum amount of time that the virus was known to incubate before manifesting symptoms. Normally, all this should have been the responsibility of medical professionals and epidemiologists. In the slum, though, the jobs, against most expectations, within a month, the Ebola outbreak had been contained. Monrovia was not an aberration. In the absence of rescue by the world and their own governments, which were among the poorest on the earth, West Africans proved remarkably adept at helping one another to survive. Neighborhoods mobilized, healthcare workers volunteered, secluded villages formed ad hoc task forces to oversee sanitation, quarantines, and mandatory social distancing. Education was crucial. Initially, conspiracy theories abounded. Some West Africans embraced a rumor that the virus was a ploy to solicit foreign donor money. Spiritual healers proffered metaphysical explanations for the vagaries of death and illness. In one remote hamlet I visited in Sierra Leone, the chief had been told that somewhere a commercial plane had crashed. For every passenger who died, a villager must as well. The book, The Storm is Here, by Luke Mogles. Share the Thom Hartmann Program with your friends. Our podcast, The Hartmann Report, is absolutely free and available wherever fine podcasts are available. And the entire 3-hour podcast is available over at thomhartmann.com.
In the shadows of the past, a tale unfolds where religion ruled with an iron hold. Arts and theater silenced and banned, no laughter echoed across the land. In the dark ages where the light was dim, no dancing feet, no joyous hymn. When faith held sway and freedom fell, we walked through history's darkened well.
Welcome back, 34 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Fred in Altamont Springs, Florida. Hey, Fred, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Greetings. You've been talking about these laws that were passed in the mid-'70s that after Tricky Dick was president.
Yeah.
And the commission was the Frank Church Commission. And he's the one that got all of these things passed. And actually, there's a good book written by one of my high school and junior high friends called The Last Honest Man. And if you get a chance to read it, it's really good because it talks about the whole thing, how things were. Really, there was a deep state before that with Hoover and the other guys.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Was this is The Last Honest Man Frank Church?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, check it out if you can. And also, after all those things that went on yesterday, I called up my representative, who's a Republican, one of the hardcore red guys. And anyway, I was actually able to get a hold of somebody in the office here in the Lake Mary area. And I kept saying to her, he broke the law. And she goes, no, he didn't. No, he didn't. He goes, yes. Don't you remember the first time he was impeached was for the same thing?
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
So
it was for withholding
for
funds from Ukraine specifically, but it was for withholding funds in violation of the 1974 Impoundment Control Act.
Right, exactly.
Amazing.
So,
well,
anyway,
good
I
on
just
you,
wanted
Fred,
to
for
bring
calling
that
your
up.
Republican legislators, because we all need to be doing that. Those of us who have Republican legislators. I guess I'm fortunate. My state representative, my U.S. House of Representatives, representative, and both of my senators are all Democrats. But if I had Republicans representing me, I'd be on the phone to them right now saying, I do not go along with Donald Trump breaking laws. I do not go along with him shutting down the federal government. This is wrong. You need to stop him.
Yeah, that's exactly. And I actually, we used to have somebody that was in that office, Stephanie Murphy, who was on the 1-6 commission. And what happened was, of course, after, she was on that committee and she has a young family, and she wanted to run for Senate against Rubio, but when Val Demings did, she dropped out.
Yeah.
But she was a very good member of Congress, and I got a chance to talk to her, very much pro-union, which reminds me to say thank you for supporting unions.
There you go.
I really appreciate it.
Oh, I'm a member of a union, Fred. I'm a member of SAG-AFTRA. My father was a member of a union, and that's why I had a middle-class upbringing. I mean, I've seen it in my own life. We went from being really poor. I mean, when I was 6, 7 years old, it was my mom, my dad, me, and at that time, 2 of my younger brothers, 5 of us, living in basically a 2-room house. And, it just, and then Dad got this, and he was making a living selling Rexair vacuum cleaners and World Book encyclopedias door to door. I mean, it was just the equivalent of a gig job, And we were poor. We used to go down to the we called it the cheese store, where we get the surplus macaroni and surplus American cheese and surplus powdered milk. And we'd go get free light bulbs from Consumers Power because we were below the poverty line. And then Dad got this job in a tool and die shop that had, a union. And suddenly, we bought a new house and we bought a car and we were taking a vacation every year. And Dad died, or retired with a pension before he died. I have seen it with my own eyes. And so, yeah, I'm with you. But yeah, good on you for mentioning the Church Commission. Frank Church was a good man. Wasn't he a Republican from like Idaho?
Well, you would think it would be, but no, he was actually a Democrat from Idaho.
He was a Democrat from Idaho.
Democrats
okay.
there.
Yeah, that was back in the day when there were Democrats. There you go. Okay, Fred, thanks a lot for the call. I appreciate it. Scott in Portland, Oregon. Hey, Scott, what's on your mind today?
Hello, Tom. Hey, apropos of just this last call and several others today, I wrote to both of our senators, Wyden and Merkley, and sort of poked the cage and said, come on, where the hell are the Democrats? What's going on? We don't need Schumer to stand there looking feckless and pathetic. We need him to be pounding the lectern with his shoe.
Yeah.
And where's the passion? And then put out the little timeline of tomorrow's January 30th. And in 1933, I'm sure you know this, 1933 on January 30th was the day that Hitler was installed as chancellor.
Yep.
53 days later, March 24th, he was made dictator.
Yep.
So
with
it
the
can move
enabling
that
acts.
fast.
Yeah.
Yep, that's right. And I think these guys are going to move faster. They've had over 4 years to prepare this stuff, and it's going to come like a hypersonic missile.
It already is. I mean, look what he's already done.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I threw out a closing line that just kind of popped into my head, and I like it. I'll share. Now is not the time for backroom scheming. Now is the time for rooftop screaming.
I like it.
Yeah.
So what kind of and I agree with your sentiments, and we need political theater too. I would add that.
Exactly.
So what kind of response did you get from Merkley and Wyden's offices?
Just the standard kickback. Oh, thank you for But I mean, both Merkley. I saw Merkley yesterday in a press conference. So and Wyden's been very visible. So again, as you aptly point out, we're kind of lucky here because we got some really good active people.
Yeah, 2 of the best senators out there.
I got my fingers crossed for Ben Wexler. I like him too. I think that would be a game changer. Yeah. I'm sorry, but Jamie Harrison just asleep at the switch, man.
Yeah. Jamie was kind of the old guard, I think, and we really need a new guard. We need a new generation. We need some people who are willing to take names and kick ass. I mean, it's just that simple.
Exactly.
Scott, thank you.
Well, like what you said just earlier about the Harris ran a great 1990s campaign, and that's it right there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and with the 1990s consultants, by the way, which tells you everything you need to know. Scott, thank you.
Right.
Phil in Salinas, California. Hey, Phil, what's on your mind today?
Well, I think the Democrats need to play by the Republican rules.
I don't disagree.
Start throwing them on ballots. Start gerrymandering them out of office.
if a Democratic president had sent a mob against the Capitol and 3 police officers had died as a result, every Republican would be referring to those January 6th people as cop killers. Why aren't Democrats calling them cop killers? Why, they should have been from day one. Why do Democrats just do this namby-pamby BS? I don't get it. I'm with you, Phil. Phil, I'm having a hard time hearing you, by the way. I don't know what's wrong with your phone, but I'm going to move along. But your point was well made. Gerald in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Hey, Gerald, what's up?
Technocracy.
Technocracy?
Yes, it's the government of the worst, least qualified, and most unscrupulous citizens.
Okay.
It's in the dictionary. The reason I called, I want to get your opinion. Years ago, I'd read this book on nullification, where, for example, if a state didn't want to support, say, the Iraq War, they would withhold their portion of the funds going to the feds for the Iraq War. And I was thinking if Trump and them are going to take withhold FEMA funds from states and say, you do what we say or you're not going to get the FEMA funds, California just say, hey, well, we're not going to pay the amount of funds that we would normally pay. We're going to keep that in our state. And I was just wondering what you would think about it. And it's kind of like what Patrick Swayze said in Roadhouse. There's a time to be nice and a time not to be so nice.
Yeah, I agree, Gerald. Here's the problem. The California contributes probably more to the federal coffers than any other state, and if not any other state, they're certainly in the top 2 or 3. But it's not coming out of the California Treasury. It's coming out of taxpayers in California paying their federal taxes. Mm-hmm. And as an individual, you don't have the option of not paying your federal taxes. So so states don't have the power to withhold it, first of all, legally, but they don't have the ability to withhold it because they can't just, Governor Newsom can't just say to all the taxpayers in California, don't pay your federal income taxes this year. That would be chaos. There may be something that California can do. There may be something they can withhold. There may be some way that they can provoke or kick or hurt the federal government in some way. It may or may not be legal, but hey, Trump has broken 4 or 5 laws in the last couple of days. So, Democratic governors should be able to do the same. But I don't know specifically what that would be or how it would work. But I certainly agree with your sentiment. I just don't know how to work it out. Maybe somebody who knows this stuff better than me can call in and share with us. But as far as I can tell, that would be the only way, would be to get taxpayers to refuse to pay the federal income taxes. And because they're automatically deducted from your paycheck, you really don't even have that choice. Gerald, thanks for the call. 44 and a half minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. Stay with us.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Defending America from the weapons of mass deception. I'll be right back with your calls. And welcome back. Heather in Blaine, Washington. Hey, Heather, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, I'm thinking about what our chances are even going to be in 2026 if we don't start campaigning now. So hear me out. If politics is a game, which it is, and bear with me because I don't follow football. I think it's modern gladiators, and that's not my thing. But if politics is a game, then mainstream media coverage is the football, okay? Mm-hmm. They don't care what the message is as long as it makes them money. So we need to give them something to talk about. Mm-hmm. The Democratic Party is so reactive that they're forgetting to be proactive and tell people what they can even do for them. Their message right now is, we're going to fix this. We're going to stop Trump. We're going to do this. But a lot of the people that voted for Trump are just hurting financially. They're hurting socially. And their decision to vote for him was to help themselves. Well, the Democrats need to tell them how they're going to help them. They don't need the details on what they're going to do and how they're going to make that happen. They just want to know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I agree.
So let's be loud and say, like Bernie's message is great if you get past the whole it's socialism that people put on it, But if people were to deliver that as a this is what we're going to do for you and let it go, the media would have a field day. Coverage is the touchdown. Airtime is the touchdown. Let's get some freaking touchdowns.
Yeah.
The Democrats can have the old guard in the background doing the court cases and suing the president and doing all the things that need to happen because he's a menace. But the new guard can be in the front. You know, like a PR firm came in and said, you, central casting, up to the front. And let's do it. Let's make the people that deliver the message in a package that people want to hear it from, without all the details on the snoozeville stuff that we all had in civics class that no modern people want to hear anymore. We just want to hear what's going to happen. Not us, but, you know, generally speaking. They don't want the details. They don't want to know what the recipe is. They just want to know how the food's going to taste.
Yeah.
Give them that. You know, and too much detail, people are getting lost in the details. And we're not loud enough. Mainstream media doesn't give us coverage because we're not loud enough. So let's give them something to talk about.
I agree. We need more political theater. We need outrage. We need people speaking up and speaking
And we
out.
need to do it now.
Yeah, I agree.
And I know Trump is dominating the airwaves, but if we don't start now, by 2026, people are going to be like, well, what have you been doing?
Yeah.
And they're not going to care.
Yeah. You know,
we haven't given them anything to think about.
No, I understand and completely agree broadly with everything you're saying, Heather. And the challenge that we have is breaking through the corporate media. I mean, there was an amazing study that I believe it was Think Progress did, you know, the Center for American Progress, that showed that during the Bush administration, the Sunday shows, you know, the political shows, you know, Face the Nation, Meet the Press, and all that, overwhelmingly had Republicans on. And when they were asked why, they said, because Republicans are in power, so we need to hear from the people in power. Then during the Obama administration, the Sunday shows overwhelmingly had Republicans on. And when they were asked why, they said, well, because Republicans are out of power and we need to hear from the opposition. And then when Trump came into power, the Sunday shows were overwhelmingly Republicans again. And the question was, why Republicans? Well, because Republicans are in power.
Because they make the money. I mean, they don't want to admit it.
It's not just make the money. They also agree with them on things like regulatory issues. I mean, you know, and taxation. And so, you know, we've got to overcome that media bias. And I'm with you. I think the only way to do that is with spectacle. We've got to have spectacle.
Democrats need to tell them how their taxes can help them. That's a big thing.
Amen. Heather, thank you for the call. It's 49 minutes past the hour. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us.
When I was just a kid, I had a wicked little plan. A paper bag of dog poop and a lighter in my hand. I'd sneak up to a porch, set the fire to a blaze, ring the bell and run off laughing. Oh, those were the days. But now I'm seeing flashbacks, and it's not so fun. There's a grown man in the White House pulling this on everyone. Each morning there's a package, flaming bright and strong, and America's left cleaning up. Yeah, this is Trump's ding-dong. Trump's ding-dong, another flaming mess, delivered every morning, no time to rest. We're stomping out the fires of his chaos parade, while he's laughing in the distance at the mess he's made. One day it's tax cuts, a gift for the elite. The next it's foreign leaders groveling at his feet. He pulled us out of treaties, left allies in the dark. But don't forget his golf trips while the world falls apart. Kids in cages crying, walls that never rise. Science left abandoned, truth replaced with lies. And every time we scramble to put the fire out, he's lighting up another, yeah, there's never any doubt. Trump's ding-dong, another flaming mess.
This is inspired by a caller yesterday, by the way, who said, you know what, Trump is doing what we did as kids. Amen. Welcome back. 51 minutes past the hour. Connie in Reno, Nevada. Hey, Connie, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to call and tell you how outraged I am at the DNC, at the national DNC. I am a lifelong Democrat, and regardless of what happens, I will continue to be so. However, when he was first elected in 2016 and everyone was outraged, we all started going to meetings, and we all helped, and we made phone calls, and we went door to door, and we gave money. And now in hindsight, I realized the Republicans were purging hundreds of thousands of people off the rolls while we were using technology from the 1800s, the telephone. And out of 10 phone calls, you know how that goes. You get 8 people screaming at you not to call, and 2 people, that maybe. So I just thought it was very ineffective and didn't work at all. And then I just feel like they're putting up flawed candidates that they get us almost to the finish line, like Lucy with the football. And then right at the end, they know this country's not going to vote for a woman yet. It's just not going to happen. We need a Bernie, but they've squelched him. So it just really upsets me at the national level. And I know they're having this election for the head of the national. And I look online and I can't find any substantial information on their process or how they're going about it or specifics. I have listened to Whitler.
Ben Wickler.
He seems like the guy we need right now.
I agree.
Other than Bernie that they won't put in. But Whitler would be awesome. And I guarantee he will not get in because those at the top don't want to go that progressive for us.
Well, Ben is the head of the Democratic Party in Wisconsin. The guy who's the head of the Democratic Party in Minnesota, which has also taken names and kicked ass. They've done a very good job in Minnesota, whose name is escaping me at the moment. Ken somebody?
Martin?
Yeah, Ken Martin.
Yeah.
He's also very progressive, and he's had tremendous success in Minnesota. And the consensus seems to be that one of these 2 guys is going to be the winner. If either one of them wins, I'll be very happy. I would prefer Ben, but that's largely because I know Ben personally. I've known him for years.
Okay, well, that is good to hear because I'm at the point now where I will go to Democratic meetings. I'm going to start going every month, listen to them. But I've changed my personal strategy. I will only donate to candidates like David Hope, AOC. When I see Newsom, when I see a good candidate, I'll donate to them and I will help them.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to waste my time using 1800s technology when I know it doesn't work. I don't care what they say.
Well, instead of making phone calls, what we should be doing is signing people up to post on social media. I post on 6 different social media sites every single morning, and I just, I do a single post, which is my daily take. But if you really wanted people to do the 21st century version of phone banking, it would be, will you please go to X and post, in response to 100 different things, post something. And post dozens of your own every single day. Will you become very, very active on and pick one social media platform and just live there and become very, very, very aggressive and very active instead of phone banking?
I do that, and believe me, I've lost a lot of family and friends doing that.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I'm good with that.
Yeah.
But we need the national people out there with a direct message. Our message last time was democracy. Yeah. It did not resonate because it does not translate to your kitchen table.
I know.
And
the other guy's a crook isn't a strong enough message either. We have to be both. Any good argument, any good sales pitch in politics involves 2 things. It involves moving toward pleasure. It involves here's what I'll do for you, and it involves moving away from pain. Here's why the other guy's an SOB. And we've got to have a message that encapsulates both those things, and it's got to be loud, and it's got to be profound, and it's got to be repeated over and over and over again. And Democrats have to get all over it. Connie, thank you for the call. Mark in Chicago. Hey, Mark, what's up?
Hey, Tom, how you doing?
Good.
I want to, before I set this up, I heard you talking about peak Hexeth, and then I heard a little bit. I watched a little bit of the terrible hearing with RFK this morning. And, of course, he was on talking about and using the fact that he was a 14-year in the attic, and they've been clean for 41 years, which is good. And I'm not, but I don't want people to misconstrue that we are any way denigrating people who have had substance problems. I have people in my family who are still struggling with it.
Sure.
However, Pete Hegseth, who, to our knowledge, is still a person who has a problem with alcohol, because he said, I guess he said, that he is not going to drink if he gets this job.
Right.
That is ridiculous for us to allow for a person who has a problem, and we know a person who has substance issues can tell us anything, but they're going to have that problem.
I'm with you, Mark. I mean, he never checked into
that.
rehab. He never got with any kind of a program. He's and now he's the guy running our military, the largest in the world. It's a scary, scary thing. The Republicans really let us down. Mark, thank you.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
The Thom Hartmann Book Club is The Cabinet, George Washington and the Creation of an American Institution by Leslie M. Chervinsky. This is from the introduction. At 11:30 in the morning on August 22nd, 1789, a large cream-colored coach pulled up to the front door of Federal Hall, 26 Wall Street in New York City. 6 matching, perfectly groomed horses pulled the elegant carriage with sparkling gold trim. The coachman, outfitted in crisp white and red trimmed livery, jumped down from the back of the carriage and opened the door. An elegantly dressed man with powdered hair stepped down with a portfolio of papers under his arm. He towered over his companion, Henry Knox, the acting Secretary of War, and his slaves attending to the horses. His ornate coach and his imposing presence drew curious stares from strangers passing by on the street. He walked up to the front door of Federal Hall and was immediately announced. George Washington, the first president of the United States, had arrived for his first visit to the United States Senate. This was no ordinary meeting. 2 years earlier, the delegates at the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia had agreed that the Senate would advise and consent on treaties and other questions of foreign policy. But in practice, how the president and the Senate would interact remained for the first office holders to work out. Washington's relationship with the Senate was just one of countless governing details that he had to establish as the first president. Establishing precedent for every presidential action consumed his thoughts in the first few years of his administration. Not only would the American public and international audience judge his every action, but his successors would be guided by his choices. The stakes could not have been higher. The future of of the Republic rested on Washington making the right decisions. He approached every new situation with caution and took action only after consulting with his advisors. His first visit to the Senate was no different. The tense relationship between Native American nations and the United States posed an immediate challenge after Washington's inauguration on April 30th, 1789. Most Native American nations had sided with the British during the Revolutionary War, recognizing the threat that American settlers posed to native lands. On November 15th, 1789, representatives from the national government, North and South Carolina, the Creeks, and the Cherokees planned to meet to discuss the controversial treaties signed between 1783 and 1789 and to negotiate a new treaty. Washington had to select the representatives to send on behalf of the federal government, another important first for the new president. At his August 22nd meeting, Washington planned to seek advice about what instructions he should give to the commissioners. Because he considered Native American relations to fall under the heading of foreign policy, he followed the constitutional guidelines calling for him with the Senate. On May 25th, 1789, less than a month after his inauguration, Washington sent to the Senate all of the United States' previous treaties with Indian nations, along with a number of supporting documents. After a brief discussion, the Senate postponed its consideration of these papers. At the beginning of August, the Senate created a committee to meet with Washington. That committee planned the minute details of the upcoming meeting, down to where Washington would sit and how he would enter the chamber. On August 20 and 21, Washington nominated commissioners to negotiate with the Southern Indians. On August 21st, he sent an official note to the Senate announcing his visit the next day to discuss the terms of the proposed treaty. When Washington and Knox arrived at Federal Hall at 11:30 a.m., the doorkeeper announced their arrival. Washington sat at the front of the chamber and Knox took the chair to the right. Washington handed his remarks to Knox, who in turn handed them to Vice President John Adams. Adams read the statement, but as Senator William McClay from Pennsylvania recalled, the senator, quote, could not master one sentence of it, end quote. Adams was not known for his public speaking skills, but the senator's struggles weren't entirely. The Senate gathered for their work in the large chamber that occupied the first floor of Federal Hall. Because of the August heat in New York City, the doorkeeper had opened the windows in search of a cooling breeze. But along with fresh air, noisy Wall Street's pedestrians, carriages, peddlers, and horses flowed into the Senate chamber. The clamor overpowered Adams' voice, so few senators could make out the words that Washington had so carefully crafted. After a few complaints, Adams repeated the speech from the beginning. Washington's remarks offered a brief synopsis of the current diplomatic state between the United States and the Southern Indians and posed 7 questions for the Senate to answer with an aye or a no. Adams finished his recitation and sat. The seconds ticked by as the senators remained in awkward silence. A few shuffled papers or cleared their throats. McClay speculated in his diary that his colleagues were so intimidated by Washington's presence in the Senate chamber that they cowered in shameful silence. Eager to show that they could be active participants in the creation of foreign policy, McClay stood up and suggested referring the Washington's 7 questions to committee for discussion in detail. Washington then lost his temper, stood out at, "This defeats every purpose of my coming here." The senators fell into a stunned hush before Washington acquiesced to McClay's suggestion and offered to return to the Senate a few days later. Although he did not return to the following Monday, his first visit to the Senate was an inauspicious the executive-legislative relationship. The book is The Cabinet by Leslie M. Chervinsky.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
For the third hour of our program, one of my colleagues, Michelangelo Signorile, has a great newsletter over on Substack. It's at signorile.com, signorile.com. Today's Trump is sentencing to death 26 million people and counting. This is obscene what Donald Trump did yesterday. And Michelangelo is on the line with me right now, the journalist, the author and host of the Michelangelo Signorile Show on SiriusXM Progress Channel 127, following this program, 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time every day. And as I said, the Signorile Report on Substack. Mike, welcome back to the program. It's always great having you on. This is, well, first of all, set this up for us. What specifically did Trump do that is concerning you?
First off, thanks for having me, Tom. It's always great to be with you and to chat about these things that don't get a lot of attention. Trump, in the efforts in which he froze money internationally as well as domestically, U.S. aid all over the world, also stopped the program known as PEPFAR that was created by George W. Bush in 2003, the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief. It is a program that delivers antiretroviral drugs for people with HIV worldwide in Asia, Africa, and poor countries all around the world, 26 million people. And these people are people who have HIV, and they are living and thriving because these drugs keep HIV suppressed. They keep it from replicating. They also keep it from being able to be transmitted as well. And he cut off these drugs. And what's even most cruel about this, in this order to cut off all aid, he even instructed the various clinics around the world. He instructed organizations in other countries to stop dispersing the medications that were purchased with USA aid, even if the drugs have already been obtained and are sitting in the local clinics. Now, if people do not have these drugs for any length of time, HIV begins replicating in their bodies. They will soon start to develop illnesses. They will soon be able to transmit HIV. It happens very rapidly, and they will eventually have terrible suffering and die. It's 26 million people, I say, and counting, because, of course, there will be many more. And, what I wrote about was, this is a terrible humanitarian calamity, but George W. Bush understood, after Bill Clinton put in place the fact that he declared AIDS a national security threat and gave it to the National Security Council as a major issue for them to work with. George Bush understood as well, even though his father, like Ronald Reagan, ignored AIDS, that we had to stop the spread of AIDS globally because it is a security threat. It destabilizes governments. You can draw a direct line to economies collapsing, genocides, terrible coups and dictatorships. So they realized that, it was important as a national security threat as well. Yeah. Also, when you look at what's happening with how countries are now, even with the mass deportations, saying we might have to turn to China if the U.S. isn't going to help us, it keeps these countries from turning to our adversaries.
Yeah, that's an important point also. My understanding is there's really two dimensions to this. The first is people who actually have AIDS taking medication that prevents it from replicating in their body, keeps them alive, prevents mutations, by the way, that might produce an AIDS strain that's even drug resistant. And that's a very good thing. And also in many of these countries, this is as much or largely as much, close to as much, a heterosexual issue as a gay issue, but also there's PrEP, right, which is the drugs that you can take to prevent an infection with AIDS. And I heard on NPR this morning a report that was a little ambiguous, and I didn't quite understand it, and I wanted to ask you what's really going on here, which was that apparently we're providing PrEP drugs as well, and those are definitely cut off, although the life-saving drugs, the administration overnight has said that they're going to back off on that thing and say, okay, you can get the antivirals if you already have AIDS. Did I understand that correctly?
Sort of, and you are not to, feel guilty if you weren't able to get it, because it's all been very ambiguous coming from the government. It wasn't clear when they initially did this what programs were cut and what weren't, but the reporting certainly pointed to the directive that went out to these clinics. A message that the New York Times said prompted speculation the program would not ever resume. Overnight, the State Department, through Marco Rubio, did say any life-threatening illnesses that are being funded, help, aid being funded for life-threatening illnesses will not be part of this pause. So basically lifted that. Although some of the reports are saying that's not entirely clear, and already people were affected by it, but that drugs that are used for prevention, these drugs also are used for people to take who are not HIV positive to prevent themselves from becoming HIV positive. Say a spouse, a wife, who is married to a husband who has HIV, and she would take the drug to protect herself. A mother who has HIV, making sure if she's pregnant, these drugs have also shown they can prevent her baby from having HIV. So they're not going to do it for prevention, but they're going to do it for treatment, at least for now. But nobody knows how long this is going to go on. Of course, the administration is in a battle with the courts over the federal spending domestically. So it is a mess, and it's throwing these countries into turmoil and throwing people's lives into turmoil.
Mike, to what extent do you think that this policy is just, part of the let's gut the government, libertarian rampage that we've been seeing the GOP has been on basically since the era of Reagan, versus Republicans dancing to the tune of the other Republicans who have been spending the last couple of decades regularly traveling to Africa, promoting laws like the, kill the gays law in Uganda and in other African countries. And, the so-called evangelicals, the so-called followers of Christ, who in fact are spitting in the, the face of and in the memory of Jesus. What do you think is the primary motivation here, and how does their response to this inform your understanding of that motivation?
Well, I think this is a perfect storm of things that came together, rationales that feed Donald Trump's impulses. Let's not forget, Donald Trump has promoted eugenics. Donald Trump has talked about good genes and bad genes. Donald Trump has talked about immigrants as poisoning our blood. Donald Trump told his own nephew, who came to him for help, who had a disabled son, these people, we should just let them die. So Donald Trump has this sick obsession with eugenics. And of course, these are the people in what he called, remember, the S-hole countries, right? He doesn't care about them. So he's already there. Then you've got, as you just described, you've got the budget cut people who just want to cut money. Why are we spending money?
Right, because billionaires' taxes have to pay for this stuff, God forbid.
Of course, right. And they're tied in, though, with the Christian right. Russell Vought, who is Donald Trump's nominee for Office of Management and Budget, is both. He wants to cut money, but he's also an evangelical Christian. They believe in abstinence. They believe you don't need to have this drug. You need to just control your sexuality. They also have somehow tied this to abortion, of course, always bringing that up. Because in one country, some of the nurses, 4 nurses out of 250,000 nurses who actually administer these drugs worldwide, 4 nurses also separately performed 20 abortions, even though in Mozambique, even though it's legal in Mozambique to have an abortion. It had nothing to do with the money, but according to the law, people who administer the drugs can't also perform abortions. So they've blown that up. But I think you have to throw in then the third component to this is RFK Jr. He, of course, his hearings happening today, coming in as Trump's HHS secretary. He does not believe that HIV causes AIDS. He's a total crackpot who believes that AIDS is caused by environmental conditions and is caused by drug use and all of this kind of thing.
Is he still saying that?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean, he has pushed that idea for years. So you think about Donald Trump, who's already predisposed with his eugenics mindset. He's got all these other people giving him rationales, right? All in his ear, and that's what you get.
That's crazy. We're talking with Michelangelo Signorile, the journalist, the author, and host of the program that follows mine right here on SiriusXM Progress Channel 127, weekdays 3 to 6. Mike, we're going to hit a hard break here. I can't control it. About a minute and 20 seconds, I think. But what can people who are listening right now do about this? What's the call to action here?
I think what we've seen, certainly why the spending freeze has gone away, Trump rescinded it, not just because of the courts, but Republicans were getting calls to their offices from their constituents. And I think that people need to make those phone calls, put the pressure on, because I think that's what's really working.
The number for the congressional switchboard, and if you don't know who represents you in the House of Representatives, just give me your zip code, they'll tell you. And if you're not sure who your senators are, tell them what state you're from, and they'll tell you, and they'll just connect you to the office. The phone number is 202-224-3121. Write it down, put it in your contacts in your phone, put it on a slip of paper and put it on your refrigerator with a magnet. 202-224-3121. We need to raise some hell. Are there any particular members of Congress that we should be targeting?
Republicans. I mean, I think Republicans are very scared. They're publicly not criticizing Trump, but from reports we're hearing, they've been calling the White House very worried about how their families, people they know, how people are being affected by all of this cut in spending that we've seen and these programs. And I think it's very worrying to them. So put the pressure on.
There you go. And check out Mike's op-ed today over at signorile.com, signorile.com. Trump is sentencing to death 26 million people in counting. It's absolutely brilliant. Mike, thanks so much for being with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tom, as always. Great show.
Always great talking with you. Thank you. It's 18 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
I have a Geeky Science, and I'll be picking up your calls, so stay tuned. We'll be right back. And welcome back. And let's see here, Ed in Chicago. Hey, Ed, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Quickly, I'm hoping the Democratic Party will wake up to the fact that fear will break through the corporate media because fear sells. Mm-hmm. And the Democratic Party, they can be absolutely honest in scaring people. But I don't know if they'll ever grasp that point. But my question for you is, I don't know if you remember a couple of weeks ago, I ran my worst case scenario by you, where Trump uses either ginned-up violence or organic violence that will occur at demonstrations when the weather warms up to suspend the Constitution. And my question at the time to you was, what's going to stop him? And you told me that it's not far-fetched. That could happen, that he could suspend the Constitution, meaning no midterms. So I guess my question is the Democratic Party, are they I keep getting the impression from them that they keep thinking, well, Trump would never do that. And it's like, by now they ought to know that there is no never do that in Trump's head. He'll do whatever he can get away with.
I know.
And I don't see, I still see the Democratic Party, for the most part, acting like they're dealing with a typical Republican politician, counting on our offices in our system that has worked for so long to continue to work. And so I guess that's my question. Do you know if there's any, the Democratic Party, are they talking about it's time to pull out all the stops and start raising hell?
Yes.
Or are they?
Yes. Okay. Yes. There was an emergency meeting yesterday that Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer called, and they're going to start fighting everything. They're going to start blocking everything, or at least that's what they say. This is according to Axios this morning. The Democrats are going to get into ass-kicking mode, and it can't come it can't come too soon. So yeah, hopefully.
I'll give you one more quickly, a political theater thing.
Yeah. If
Kamala Harris had won and refused and did not put her hand on the Bible when she took the oath, we would still be hearing about it every day from all the Republicans.
It would be a continuous meltdown. It would, right. And Democrats need to learn how to do this.
Exactly. That's a gift that Trump handed them. They should be using it, and instead they just...
Yep. It's called outrage politics, and Democrats need to be using it. Ed, thank you very much. Spot on. Thank you. Dale in Waverville, California. Hey, Dale, what's up?
Good morning. Weaverville.
Oh, Weaverville. Okay, I'll fix that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So what's up?
All right. Yeah, anyway, I wanted to call. I was going to touch a little bit on what Heather said in the last hour from Washington about Democrats not messaging very well. I watched Adam Schiff yesterday commenting on the freeze of federal funds, and he just sounded like he was reading off a script. He didn't sound angry or outraged or anything. You know, it's like this guy doesn't care. All he cares about is this check. That's what what appears to us normal people sitting at home. He doesn't sound outraged. He didn't sound angry. He just read it like he was reading.
Yeah, these guys need a drama coach.
Yeah, and
they
then
really do. They should hire Richard Green.
And then number two, I just wanted to comment quickly on Pete Hegseth's sister-in-law, and she was not very bright to make a deal with a Republican senator and actually believe him.
Well, yeah, she believed that Thom Tillis was telling her the truth, and Thom Tillis was lying to her. And you're right, Dale. She should have known. If he's a Republican, you just cannot trust what he has to say. It's 22 minutes past the hour. Back with your calls in just a minute. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com.
Turn off that channel, it's filling you with lies, spreading fear and anger beneath those polished ties. They twist the truth and bend the facts, it's all a grand disguise. Don't let them rot your mind away, don't buy their alibis. Don't listen to Fox, so-called news. It's misleading, it's wrong, it's designed to confuse. It will watch your brain and make you mean. Turn off the noise and say the truth unseen.
So, welcome back. 23 minutes past the hour. Our wisdomschool.com alert. This is kind of a geeky science as well. The expectation effect. This is fascinating stuff. You ever have a sense that if you believe something or think something enough that you can kind of manifest it? I mean, I get it that it's kind of the foundation of a lot of new age stuff, you know, and The Secret, you know, that book that was hot a decade or so or two ago, and it goes back to Norman Vincent Peale and everybody else. But there's an actual science here that, for example, you shoot photons of light, which can be either particles or waves, through a double slit, and they will form an interference pattern indicative of a wave form, that they are waves, not particles. But if you observe it, if a human being looks at it, suddenly they become particles. Like, oh, light changes based on being observed by humans? Seriously? This is something called the experimenter effect, and you see it in other cases where hardcore stuff like, you know, influencing random number generators, where the experimenter's belief influences the outcome of the experiment. And it's pretty amazing stuff. And in physics, in quantum physics, this is not considered weird. But the bottom line is, you know, when you consider how political figures like Donald Trump and Nancy Mace are spreading hate, well, that becomes viral, and it goes beyond just people hearing it and becoming hateful. It's like there's more hate in the system. There's more hate in the grand, you know, the Akashic record, in the grand collective consciousness of all of humanity. That's what Donald Trump and people like Nancy Mace are doing. By spreading hate, is increasing the amount of hate that we're all marinated in, that we're all living in. Now, the opposite side of that is that, you know, when we spread love, when we spread peace, when we spread, fellowship, our thoughts actually influence us and the people around us. And I mean that literally in the scientific sense, not just in the metaphysical sense. And I think, you know, frankly, we need to be aware of this, that there's a kind of a personal responsibility here. both personal and collective responsibility, because our expectations and intentions quietly influence the reality not only that we experience, but the one that the people around us experience. And this is powerful stuff. I get it that, even at the psychologists will tell you about this. Like this amazing study that was done where they took a classroom of kids and just randomly assigned half the kids to this one category, and they told the teacher, these are the they're going to do really well. It was just random. At the end of the year, the kids that the teacher thought were gifted actually did a whole lot better than the kids that the teacher didn't think were gifted. Expectations define reality. So let's work on being kind to our fellow human beings, and let's hold a positive vision for the future of America and American democracy. So what's on your mind? I'll pick up your calls on the other side of the break. It's 27 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Talk media for the sane among us.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Exposing the con in conservative. I'll be right back with your phones. Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Criminology by Greg Barak. This is from the introduction. Criminology on Trump is about family business, habitual lawlessness, and the struggle for economic and political power. The central character, Donald Trump, is a con artist, a master gaslighter, and a shrewd racketeer. It is the story of how the Houdini of white-collar crime and the founder and CEO of the Trump Organization operated a criminal enterprise from within an incorporated organization beginning in 1980 and continuing up to and from within the bowels of the White House for 4 years. At the same time, it's the history of the causation of the social, psychological, and physical harms connected to the Donald and his associates before, during, and after the presidency. This book is also an account of the activities that Donald Trump pursued in order to obtain the power of Commander-in-Chief of the United States, what he then did with that power of the bully pulpit once he achieved it, and finally the lengths to which he would go to keep from losing that power. Lastly, this is the story of what many elected and appointed politicos did or did not do to acquire or to forfeit their individual shares of Trumpian power. This overall analysis of the underside of the rule of law begs the question, had the Donald not become the 45th president of the United States, would he, his children, or the Trump Organization have found themselves formal defendants and legal adversaries of the people of the state of New York? My answer unequivocally would have been no way. As of January 6, 2022, the question remains open as to whether Donald Trump, as the former president, or any of his family members will ever be indicted and prosecuted for criminal tax fraud and the other felonies, along with the Trump Organization, Inc., and its CFO, Alan Weisselberg. From the point of view of newsmaking, lawlessness, and equal justice, much of the popular discourse surrounding Trump has to do with competing narratives. The most reverberating of these has been the dueling apocalyptic narratives traversing both old and new media platforms alike. One narrative has to do with witch hunts, hoaxes, fake news, global elites, and the deep state engaging in a myriad of underworld and otherworld conspiracies to bring down Trump. The other narrative has to do with saving the U.S. democracy from authoritarianism, recovering law and order from the damage, chaos, and trauma of Trump, and restoring American normalcy without all of that political insanity. While these two narratives capture the cultural conflict, the diverse groups of people at work here and the rival social movements of incompatible interests, desires, and visions, neither speaks to the fundamental structural conditions that generate the divisiveness between these two narratives. Without ever addressing these structural relationships, the two sides will remain at loggerheads for some time to come. The medium is always, as always, is still the message. And so far in the 21st century, social media is the medium. At the same time, the weaponizing of racism, misogyny, hate, fear, intimidation, and violence vis-a-vis social media is neither new nor unique to the United States. These socio-cultural expressions of the contradictions of patriarchy, neocolonialism, and capitalism have been around since the nation's inception. Today's Proud Boys are the contemporary versions of New England churchmen in the 1700s, the Klan riders of the 1800s, or the fervent followers of Joseph McCarthy in the 1950s. Likewise, the anti-critical race theory politicians of today that do the bidding for white minority rule and racial discrimination are very much the same as John C. Calhoun fronting for the rich plantation owners during the antebellum South. The primary differences between the not-so-distant past of the last 75 years and the present have to do with the disbursements of the accumulation of capital. From post-World War II until around 1974, the United States experienced close to 3 decades of unparalleled upward social mobility, as well as a rapidly expanding middle class. However, since the mid-1970s to 2022, there's been a steady increase in economic inequality, a shrinking middle class, and downward social mobility for many. Thus, the contemporary bipartisan erosion of the liberal capitalist consensus in the United States is not the primary cause of our present democratic crisis, but it is rather symptomatic of a much broader problem that neither the Republicans, as a whole, nor most of the Democrats are willing to accept. The book, continuing, I'm referring to the inability of our bourgeois democratic system to resolve the contradictions of a political economy that promises the American dream to one and all and yet caters to the richest 1% and provides suitably for the upper 10%. In other words, our country's present-day conflicts over identity politics, government failures, neoliberal policies, right-wing intransigencies, and climate change not only predate Donald Trump and Trumpism, but they are all fundamentally driven by the unrelenting and expanding political economy of structural inequality. What makes this Trump book different from the others is that it is the only one grounded in the scientific study of crime and social control. Criminology focuses on the pathology of harmful acts and the cultural construction of both crime and punishment. The book is Criminology on Trump by Greg Barak. Greg Barak, by the way, is an expert in criminology, as you might guess. Help support progressive radio. If you're listening to us on a commercial station, call their advertisers and let them know you're listening. If you're listening to us on Pacifica, one of our many nonprofit stations, please support them when they do their fundraising drives. Thanks for supporting Progressive Talk Radio and tag you're it. So between his tax cuts and crashing the debt ceiling and shifting billions of Treasury dollars into crypto and tariffs and all this other stuff, Trump is threatening to crash our economy. And he doesn't seem to be particularly worried about that. Why would that be? Well, first off, economic disasters are great excuses to cut taxes. Both Reagan and George W. Bush used recessions as their excuse to stimulate the economy by cutting trillions from the taxes of billionaires. Secondly, economic crises increase the tolerance for strongman governments. Hitler rode to power in Europe based on the Great Depression. And third, billionaires make a fortune when there's a market crash, because they can buy all the stock that average people are trying to unload from their 401ks to pay the damn rent. There's a whole article about this that lays the whole thing out over at HartmannReport.com. It's titled Crashing the Economy, Trump's Blueprint for Power and Profit. Check it out.
Every day's an opportunity to do something good in your family, in your community, in your
Kind of apropos of my last rant, isn't it? 35 minutes past the hour, picking up your calls here. Donna in Chicago. Hey, Donna, what's up?
Hi, Tom.
Hey.
If Trump doesn't make it through his term and J.D. Vance takes over, do you think his popularity would be any better than Trump's?
No, I think J.D. Vance is an incompetent politician. The only reason he became a senator from Ohio was because Peter Thiel dropped, I believe it was $15 million into that race and just wiped out Tim Ryan. I don't know if he's still wearing eyeliner, but he's just the weirdest guy ever, you know? He's I don't see any kind of political future for J.D. Vance.
Well, he really scares me because apparently he's a follower of that Curtis Yarvin.
Curtis Yarvin, yeah.
Oh my gosh, who feels like
we need a
the
dictator.
government is, yeah. And also, real quick, if you get a chance, there's an awesome article on Slate by Kamala Harris's videographer. And if just one quick question, about 2 weeks ago, you did I think it was on your Geeky Science thing about the green drink that kind of maybe helps with Alzheimer's.
Yeah, not Alzheimer's specifically, but what they found is that green vegetables have compounds in them called polyphenols that are really, really powerful antioxidants that help not just prevent oxidation, but apparently some of them even cause new cells to grow and things. And uniquely, they're able to pass through the blood-brain barrier. And the study that they did found that when they gave green drinks to people, these were all people over 50, all the way up to into their 80s. And when they gave them green drinks 3 or 4 days a week, as I recall, might have been 2 days a week, I think it was 3 days a week, over a period of several months, these people actually saw, and they were doing MRI scans of their brains, these people actually saw not just improved cognition, not just the ability to think and remember things better, but they also saw physical changes in the brain as the hippocampus and the other regions of the brain that are associated with memory actually grew. And that's mind-boggling. I mean, that's just mind-boggling. Now, that's not going to, cure or help or maybe not even necessarily stave off Alzheimer's, which is apparently a completely different organic condition than just run-of-the-mill dementia. But big deal, Donna.
Any particular greens or?
The greener it is, the better. I think it's the stuff associated with chlorophyll that's doing it, but I don't. Okay. I wasn't one of the scientists, so I don't know. I mean, I know Louise makes just spectacular green drinks, and she'll toss a little, apple or carrot in for flavor, and then, just juice an entire pound of spinach or a pound of kale. Just the darker green, the better, because it's the polyphenols are the, the other thing, one of the things that they found with the blue zones people was that they found that the people who eat black beans are having, longer lifespan and fewer cognitive problems. And apparently the purple dye in the skin of the black beans is a really potent polyphenol. So, this goes back to the whole notion of, you want to eat as many colors as possible in every meal. And it's probably one of the reasons why, you look at a picture of a meal, and the meals that have multiple colors in them are the ones that make us salivate. I think we have this, wired into our DNA instinctive understanding of this, and need to do this. So that's the story.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah. Donna,
and cheers to Louise for her expert writing.
Yeah, her songs. Yeah, she's on a roll here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Donna. CJ in Shreveport, Louisiana. Hey, CJ, what's up? CJ, you got to be. Hey, you're on the air. What's on your mind today? You need to turn down your radio or TV or whatever it is there.
Okay, hold it. That's actually you from 24 seconds ago.
Okay, it did indeed.
YouTube
buffering.
All right. Anyway. I think it was on Inauguration Day, you had a female caller call in, and she was asking about, just a second, let me hit the wrong button. She was asked about what you thought maybe Mike Johnson's secret plan was, and you said it would only have kicked in if Kamala had won, and you didn't know what it was. Right. I think I figured it out.
Okay. This is, by the way, for people who don't know what we're talking about, Donald Trump, a couple of days before the election, did this whole wink and nod thing during one of his rallies, talking about how him and Mike Johnson had this plan to make sure that he became president. So back to you.
Right. And Mike Johnson said that his only secret plan was that he was going to follow the Constitution to a T.
Right, which could mean anything.
Well, I think I know what it means.
Okay.
Article 2, Section 1, I think it's Section 1 of Paragraph 2, talks about the electors. And it says that each state shall appoint in a manner that the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors equal to the number of senators and representatives to which they're allocated, the whole number of.
Correct.
And then it applies one restriction to them. But no senator or representative or anyone holding any office or public trust under the United States shall be appointed an elector.
Right. They were
like
supposed to be completely nonpartisan. The Jefferson's idea was to recreate the Council of Wise Elders, the Wikige-Gemeinschaft that the old Anglo-Saxon ancestors of the Brits had in the tribal days. Yeah.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. I checked my own state. It listed the electors on the ballot that I could see on my app before I went to vote.
Mm-hmm.
And I recognize some of the names of the Democratic electors as being state representatives, and some other. And I checked others, and at least half were officials at some level, elected or appointed government officials. We're not talking like party chairs or things like that,
right.
Party committee members. We're talking, actual city council or county commission or even state representatives and senators. Actual office holders. Then I went and checked the list of Republicans. None of them were.
Oh, interesting. So you think they were going to disqualify Democratic electors?
Right. On January the 6th, if Kamala had won, I think what would have happened was they would have challenged all the electors that were public officials. And then when the Democrats tried to turn and say, well, we're just going to do that to y'all, we don't have any.
That makes a pile of sense.
Right. And then so I think what we need to do is get the word out to all Democratic Party officials. Never appoint an unqualified elector again.
Yeah, well, now
it says both parties basically ignored that rule.
But no senator or representative or person holding an office of public trust or profit under the United States shall be appointed elector.
Right, I understand.
So the understanding is these are federal officials.
That's what we would think. But under could also mean, well, the states are under the federal government.
Sure.
The cities
and Sam Alito and Clarence Thomas might go along with it.
How the courts would interpret that.
Yeah, I get it.
And I think, given the current Supreme Court in that situation, they would have sided with whatever would help the Republicans.
That's amazing. Well, here, let me give my listeners a little assignment here, CJ. You've done your homework there for Louisiana, and you've found that many of your Democratic electors were state officials, and none of the Republicans were. I'd like to know what's going on in other states. So if anybody wants to, look up who were the electors for your state for both parties in the last election, and call into the program tomorrow or Friday and let us know. I'd love to do a little survey here and find out. I think what you're saying makes a hell of a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, and it would be following the Constitution to a T. It would have been the constitutionally valid and even proper thing for them to do that.
Right.
Not after having this gentleman's agreement that both parties would ignore it.
Right.
All these previous elections. In 2016, you may recall, an article was published somewhere that said about 50 of Trump's electors were held office in states at the state level where the state constitutions forbade that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
CJ, thanks for that. That's friggin' brilliant. I love the way you think. Thank you so much. I appreciate the call. In a couple of seconds here, it'll be 45 minutes past the hour, and I'll be right back with you with more of your calls in a few minutes.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
So the press secretary for Trump is now saying, we're not cutting, well, I'll tell you about it in a minute. Hang on. And welcome back, Bill in Princeton, Minnesota. Hey, Bill, what's on your mind today?
Hey, getting back to your little thing about the positive energy and stuff, there's no money in peace and harmony and love. That's
Sadly.
why, it's a lot of money on the other side of that. But, okay, now, I was at a town hall on Monday for Ilhan Omar. Mm-hmm. And I got the mic at one point. I just kind of directly asked her about this, Winkler Martin thing, and she kind of laughed. She was like, I really can't talk about that. And talk about some other stuff. She goes, but the numbers show it's going to be Ken.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I mean, he got into the race way before Ben did, and he locked up about half of the delegates.
Right, I understand that, but I heard it from the inside, you know.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if I was going to call today, but when I heard you talking about it, and then I heard you talking about our state election, well, Doran Clark just won last night's election for Kerry Dietzig's seat, and he really pounded, even though it's a super blue district. And I don't know if you know about the rest of this stuff. We've got the Minnesota Supreme Court ruled that the Republicans attempt to power grab our House because, see, there's another election that just happened, and the Republicans are refusing to seat the winner of that. They went to court. They had the recall, the recounting.
In Minnesota, or are you talking about North Carolina?
Minnesota.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm in Princeton, Minnesota.
Wow.
See, we had an election that was called into contest.
Right.
And the Democrat won by a small margin. And then they wanted a recount. So they did the recount, and he won that. Then they disputed it, so it went to the state Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court ruled that he won. But, see, they have a one-vote advantage in the House. And they won't sit this guy. So they've been passing all this legislation illegally because you have to have 68 votes, and they only have 67 because we won't get this thing. So they're trying to, they're blocking power grab, and they just won't seat this guy. So now we're waiting on that, and then there's another special election. But right now we cemented the state Senate is firmly in control of the Democrats, and we're still waiting for this power grab to be remedied through the House in Minnesota. Otherwise, because they won't do a power share.
Will that change the balance of power in the House?
All these bills. Huh?
Would seating that state representative change the balance of power in the House?
Yes, it would be 68-68.
Uh-huh.
So then they'd have to do a power sharing, but right now it's 68-67 for the Republicans.
Right, right. And that's as a result of gerrymandering, right?
Well, actually, they just, no, actually it was just, he won the race, but then the Republicans, they disputed it.
No, I mean the Republicans have as many seats as they do because as a remnant of gerrymandering from the past, or am I wrong? I know that's the case in Wisconsin.
That I wouldn't know.
Okay, all right.
You know, gerrymandering, we don't have too much of that here compared to other states.
No, they just really did it to Wisconsin back in the days of Scott Walker.
Big time.
Yeah.
Wisconsin, but it looks like it's going to be Martin, and you know he's pretty much right on the ball too.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Thank you, Bill. Thank you very much. We'll be right back. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. It's no coincidence that the time in Europe when the church ran the continent, you know, from around the 5th century to around the 15th or 16th century, that 1,000-year period is referred to as the Dark Ages. This is what happens when religion controls politics, when religion controls the state, the nation, and every nation of Europe was controlled essentially by the Catholic Church during that period of time. It got busted up with the Protestant Reformation in the 16th century. This was what the founders of this country very much knew about. George Washington refused to declare himself a Christian. Thomas Paine wrote an entire book embracing atheism. Ben Franklin fled Massachusetts as a teenager to escape the religious threats. And Thomas Jefferson went off on it regularly. There's a whole piece about how the Republicans are trying to impose a new dark age on America. It's all laid out, all the quotes and all the links over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out.
In the heart of our hometown, where the streets are bustling around, we gather neath the morning sun. Together we can get things done. Every voice, every hand, together we can make a stand. Tag your interest, join the fight for
Welcome back, 9 minutes before the hour. Karen in Winter Haven, Florida. Hey, Karen, hang on just a second. The White House has announced that they are rescinding the freeze on federal loans and grants. This all blew up in their face. But then their new press secretary just came out and said, no, it's not actually, we're not actually rescinding it. We're just tweaking it, or some words to that effect. And so keep an eye on this. This is a rapidly changing situation. So, Karen, what's on your mind today?
Well, I just ordered another case of toilet paper. And I want to point out a new perspective to look at, the taxes we pay.
Hang on just a second, Karen. Is the toilet paper in anticipation of the bird flu?
Oh, of course.
Okay. Forgive the interruption.
I'm a Eric Feigelding fan.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
No, I want a new perspective on, the taxes we pay into our government is our investment in those institutions that do things that we cannot do for ourselves, like the CDC and the Human Services and so forth. FEMA, yeah. And we don't look at it. And, the right wing has just destroyed taxes being evil. But it is our only investment. I don't have a lot of money to put in any stock market, but I do put the money into my government. Yeah. And therefore, I want it to work for me.
Yeah.
And so we need to point out to people that they are destroying our investments. They're destroying our portfolio.
Yeah, that's a great way. That's a great metaphor, Karen.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, have people understand the commons again, that this is something we commonly invest in for our good. And it's to continue year after year. Yes, you can make improvements, of course, but you don't destroy it.
Yeah, we need to bring back the civics that the Reagan administration gutted.
I know. I don't know anybody. Well, that guy was crazy with Secretary of Education there. He was
Bill
nuts.
Bennett, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, I wanted to point that out, Tom, because that has to enter our language. We have to look at, hey, my taxes are my investments.
Yeah, amen. Karen, brilliant. Thank you so much. Patricia in Burlington, Kentucky. Hey, Patricia, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I hope you are too. What's on your mind today?
Pretty good. I just wanted to, well, first of all, that last caller, that's echoing something that Heather Cox Richardson, I follow her a lot, and she keeps mentioning to not forget that this is our money.
Right.
Not their money to play with, our money.
Yep.
So that added that. But anyway, something I wanted to mention is that in my collective outrage at the Democrats for not basically running away and abandoning us, and I am a Democrat, don't get me wrong, but I just feel like this whole thing of treating any questioning of anything to do with the election, from voter suppression to interference to hacking, whatever, is treated so taboo.
Yep.
And the problem with that is, I know it's not going to change anything for this election, but they need to get a grasp on it because it's not going to stop.
I agree.
And
they're successful. I mean, why would they stop?
Well, exactly.
It works for them.
Exactly. And see, I work in local government and have for a long time. I know these things can happen. And so it's not that, I'm out there saying, everything like they are, that everything we've ever lost is that for that reason. But they put with this whole agenda that they've put a real press, and like the guy a few calls ago said, they had it set up to where no matter what, he was going to get in there. If those little tactics that they used this time didn't work, then they were going to pull that out of the bag.
Yeah.
They had something at every stop, and we have to get ahead of them. And another reason why I'm so angry at them is because I know, just from all the people I've listened to on different avenues, there are psychologists and psychiatrists out there who have been dying to help them, to help the Congress, try to help them get a grip on what's going on and how to treat people that are mentally deranged like he is.
Yeah.
And they have no interest. And it's like, call in all the troops. This is all hands on deck. And I'm just so angry because it's like, you all don't have the answer to everything. You need to take the help you can get. And so that's just my 2 cents worth. I'm just really aggravated at that. I think that they should really be letting people help them with the knowledge that they have.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I am hopeful. I guess it's because I've been an optimist my whole entire life. I think so. I am hopeful that when we get a new chair for the DNC, which will be by next Monday, that we're going to get somebody who really believes in guerrilla theater and political theater and in calling out Republicans and in doing the stuff that needs to be done. Patricia, thank you. Thank you so much for the call. Thank you for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires all of us. And that includes you. So get out there, get active, tag, you're it. Have a great afternoon. Be good to yourself and the folks around you. Stay safe, and I'll catch up with you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.